On today's special episode of Homeworthy, we're stepping inside 4 stunning homes that celebrate the beauty of traditional design. First, we visit a thoughtfully renovated Georgian home in Nashville that blends Southern charm with rich history. Next, we head to Atlanta to tour a character-filled house brimming with secondhand treasures, custom wallpaper, and cherished heirlooms. Then, just outside Chicago, we explore a cozy 1940s bungalow transformed into a warm and inviting family home full of personality and charm. Finally, we travel to the English countryside to see an elegant home featuring timeless furniture, antique accents, and luxurious materials. This summer, spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Keith. Welcome to my home in Tennessee. Come on in. I'm excited to show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi there, I'm Keith Meacham. I am the founder of Reed Smythe & Company, a design and interior brand. We have a store and a website, and we work with artisans and artists across the South and beyond to create beautiful handmade pieces for the home and garden. And I want to welcome you to my house in Nashville. This story of this house is sort of a love story because my husband and I and our 3 children lived in the middle of Manhattan John and I lived there for 18 years and then had 3 children and slowly moved from downtown to midtown, and our final apartment was on 86th between 5th and Madison. And if you have children, you know that at some point you outgrow a space, and Manhattan means you outgrow it even more quickly. And so every summer we would come down to Tennessee, where we have a house in Sewanee, which is where the University of the South is located. And we would be driving home down the mountain to the airport in Nashville, and every one of us would be crying, thinking, oh my God, we have to go back to apartment living, where we would, drag a little red wagon out to the park so that our kids could walk around in the grass. And my husband was at Newsweek at the time, and when print journalism started to, shall I say, die, we had this opportunity to rechart a course for our family. And so we didn't really think about any other place besides Tennessee, because my husband's from Chattanooga and I grew up in Mississippi, so we were thinking closer to home. So we flew down to Nashville one weekend and we toured about 5 houses. And this was the first house on the tour, and I know that the realtor put it in the first position because she knew that we were never going to want to live here. It was falling apart. It had mold on the walls. The gardens were defunct. It just was run down. And I just fell in love with it. It had all the old moldings, and it just had all of the charm of a house built in the 20s, which is when this house was built. It also has about 5 acres around it and sits on a hill. So I fell in love with the house. We went to see a bunch of other houses, but this one kept calling. And then we went back to New York and thought, oh my God, we're crazy. What are we doing? We have a great life here. Our kids are in school. We're happy. We have great friends. Why would we move? And then the realtor called and said, no pressure, but we have an offer in for this house. Do you want it? I feel like this is your house. And we just both said yes. So we had no jobs, no schools for our kids. We barely knew anyone. And we just kind of took a leap of faith. And it has been the most wonderful decision we've ever made for our family. Welcome to our house. This is the first room you enter, which is the entry hall. The concept for this room and really for the rest of the house was this piece of fabric, this horsehair fabric in this really great looking orange. So when Bill and Courtney Brockstedt and Coleman and I were coming up with the scheme for this house, we took this orange piece and said, okay, let's jump off of that. And then we moved quickly to this incredible wallpaper, this Adelphi wallpaper. This is called Philadelphia Harlequin. And it was a piece of wallpaper that was found in a house in Philadelphia, and it dated from the 1830s. And I just love the idea that this was in someone's house during the 19th century and that it's been brought back to life. And we had so much fun adding this orange to their colorway. So we did a custom color. Also in this room, because I was worried that it was a little fussy, not fussy, just a little traditional, because I've got these beautiful gilt mirrors with old glass. I've got these beautiful case pieces that I found in New York at Gerald Bland, which is one of my favorite stores in the world. We decided to put this modern photograph up by my very, very close friend and a photographer whose work I just adore. This piece is called Nettie. Nettie is a model, and Jack and the model were kind of playing around with these face paints and this dahlia. And I just loved the way that this kind of played off that wallpaper and brought it more modernity. Even though I think this wallpaper and all of their papers are pretty cool and modern in and of themselves. This is the room where everybody comes in and starts to greet each other at a party. We often have a band playing up on the landing, which is really fun because people come to Nashville, Music City, and they want to hear a band. So we pull together a trio that plays a little bluegrass or a little country, and people seem to really love that. When we were trying to figure out what to do about the rug in this room, it was kind of complicated because we had talked about having a big center hall table and we talked about having an oriental rug, but I really didn't want this space to feel fussy, like I said, because we have these gilt mirrors, which are pretty formal, and we have these case pieces. And so we decided on doing a seagrass rug, which is very inexpensive, and we cut it to fit the room so that it covers everything. And you can see it cut out here for the stairwell. And then we've got sisal on the stairwell, so it brings kind of a lightness to the room. And then I overlaid it with this tattered Caucasian rug. I love rugs that have been used. They're older, this one's been repaired and has holes in it and stuff, but I love that. And I love the way these colors kind of complement the orange couch, but also bring in some blues and other colors. So that's how we decided on the rug. One of my favorite things in this house, aside from these cool things that, as I said, were from Gerald Bland on Madison Avenue. And every day when I would go take my son to school, I'd pass by the windows of Gerald Bland and just peer in like the little match girl thinking, oh my God, I want to live in that space. And so he made these from old armoire pieces and then did the metal part with an artisan. But I love these lamps. I got these lamps for like $45. They have these kind of sea creatures spindling up into the lampshade. But I found them at a secondhand store, like a salvage store, and I just snatched them up and I thought they looked perfect here. They give this kind of movement where you've got this very geometric pattern on the wallpaper, but they add this kind of organic movement. I just think they're so chic. Welcome to our living room. This is the center of the house and where we really live and spend all of our time. We really use this room winter, spring, summer, fall. There's a great fireplace, so kids spread out and do their homework, and John will be working over here. We read in this room. There's no TV in this room, and that was really important to us not to have very many TVs. We do have one upstairs. But we've divided this room into essentially 3 sitting spaces so people can feel as though there's a conversation group over here and then one over here and one over here. I love this little space, and this tends to be the place where everybody who stays for the late night after party kind of gathers, and people start pulling up benches and other chairs from other rooms, and this ends up being kind of a genial place to hang out. I also love it because there are two really special pieces of art in this space. I love this paper sculpture by a woman named Mia Kaplan. I found it in a gallery in New Orleans years and years ago, and people were saying I was crazy because it's made out of legal paper that she's written all over, but I think it looks so cool. And it goes perfectly above the first painting I ever bought, which was in Oaxaca, Mexico. And I went into a gallery there, and I have no idea who it's by, but I just loved it. I thought it was beautiful. And so we kind of played off of the yellow in the sculpture and in the painting and added this bright yellow pillow to this beautiful tufted Swedish bench, which we found down in New Orleans at Ann Kerner, which is no longer, sadly. The rest of this space I think is great because it has all these different shapes. This Christmas chair, which I think is so pretty, I'm gonna kind of turn it around, but it's probably the nicest, well, the finest piece I have in this room because most everything else is not that fine. But I found this at Niall Smith in New York. He was a dealer for a long, long time, and many people adore him, and I certainly did. And this is an Irish Christmas chair, and I love it. We had this table made to go in this space, and we again wanted something a little more modern, so we had it made, and then we had it painted this kind of teal sky blue underneath it, which I think is so cool. And I love this table because it just looks unlike anything else in this room. And then it's next to this granny chair, which everybody said you were crazy to want this chair and this fabric. But this is a Claremont really old-fashioned fabric that I love. It reminds me of my grandmother. And then I got this chair also in New Orleans from a really good friend and antique dealer named Peter Patou. And he is probably one of the coolest guys and has some of the coolest furniture you will ever see. So I'm happy to have this in this room. We use our fireplace all the time. I think we had a fire a couple of days ago when it was chilly, and there's just something magical about being in this room when the fire is going and everybody's kind of doing their own thing. We don't eat in here, and like I said, we don't have a TV, but we definitely hang out together as a family in here. I love this mantle color. It's, again, not an expected color for this room. We've got a lot of colors in here, but I feel like they all kind of work together. And I have had this mirror. This is the first mirror piece I ever bought for my first apartment in New York, and I was so proud of it. And I still love it, but I have propped against it a Sally Mann photograph. I love collecting Southern photography, and this is one of my prized photographs, but I was decorating the mantle for Christmas one year, and the photograph fell on the ground, shattered, and you can see here that it damaged the photograph. But my friend Jack Spencer, the photographer, fixed it. He kind of glued it back together, and he said Sally would love that. They're very good friends, and he says Sally doesn't like art to be about what it's worth. And so I have this kind of, I don't know, a little riff on Sally Mann. I kind of like it. I love these. These were old Paris. I also bought those at Peter Patou's shop in New Orleans. And then I have been collecting work from this Southern artist, a woman named Ashley Pridmore, and this is called Unsupported Flight. And believe it or not, these are not real wings, and this is not a real seahorse. She has constructed it out of resin, and she is incredible. And she does a lot of work for Reed Smythe. We've done a lot of collaborations on bronze pieces. She built a great looking tulipier for us. So I really love supporting Ashley, and she's one more piece of my burgeoning Southern art collection. So this is the center of this very big room that's able to have all these seating areas. And it's framed by this incredible rug that was made by an LA artist. Her atelier is called Fedora. And I just love it because, again, you could get stuffy in a house like this, and we ended up getting this gorgeous hand-knotted, handmade rug that has sort of this butterfly wing pattern on it, and we chose each of the skeins of thread to make it, so it's got all these kind of little colors that pick up on other colors in the room. and we jumped off the rug to choose the color of the couch. And I love, this is my favorite fabric. This is a Claremont fabric, and it looks so Art Deco. And I love the way these pillows are kind of, you know, they don't really look like they go together, but then they pull together so nicely. This painting is by a photographer, actually. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Lynn Goldsmith, and she's very famous for her rock and roll photography. She worked for Rolling Stone for years. She is an amazing person. She lives in Nashville now, but moves all over. And I went to her studio to see all of her photographs. She invited me over to see her home gallery, and she had this painting on this easel, and she says, you know, I'm not a painter. I've never painted in my life, so this is very new. But I just loved it, and I thought it was so vibrant and so interesting and had these great shapes. I feel like there's a hand in there somewhere. And again, I loved it because it brought in all these colors into this room that were complementary, but a little different. There's no red in this house anywhere else, and I really liked that. But this is definitely a conversation piece when people come over. And Lynn loves it here. I think she loves having this piece above the couch. This is something I just adore. This is my collection of antique snuff boxes. And so if you were a woman in the 18th century, 19th century, you might have put your snuff here and, you know, pinched it, and it was not tacky to consume tobacco during that period. But I just think these are so gorgeous, and I've just masked them here. Every single time I go to an antique fair or a show, or even see things at auction, I buy them. So I don't know where I'm gonna eventually have to put them somewhere else, but I just think they're so beautiful, and they're hand painted. Like, this is of a beautiful woman, and it may well be that she was the owner of the snuff box. And then I think that these little scenes are so pretty, again, hand painted, and I am going to continue collecting them, and I will eventually hand them down to one of my daughters or my son. I don't know. They don't seem that interested in them right now, but I think they will be. This table, I think this is probably like a decorator's no-no. I'm sure if Bill and Courtney came here, they would be like, this is way too assembled. But I love it because it has all these things I love on it. It has books I love. It has vases I love. These beautiful little brooms were made by my friend Deborah Needleman, who was the editor of Tea magazine and founded Domino, and has now gone off and become a basket weaver. So I just kind of put these like this. So anyway, everything here has a little bit of meaning to me, and so I just keep it there. This becomes a bar when we have a party, but anyway, I always have flowers, big branches in this leech bowl that I got at my friend Kate Reinstein's store in New York. I just think they're beautiful. They're reproductions, but I absolutely love them. And then these chairs, which I'm going to turn around, I love, 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 love these chairs so much. They're paper mache, and they have a rush bottom. And I got these at the now, I think the antique shop is no longer there, but the hotel is, the Soniat House in New Orleans, and I fell in love with them, and they were way more expensive than I should have paid, but I'm still in love with them. And one time, one of my in-laws, who shall not be named, sat in the chair, and it went broke apart, and so this one has been repaired. I have a great repair guy. This etagere right here, same thing. It has a lot of the things I love and have collected over the years. Some things that I sell at Reed Smythe that I particularly love, but also just kind of random little, it's like a cabinet de curiosité, I guess. It's got some antlers, it's got some coral, it's got baskets from other countries. I bought this piece from James Sansom, who has an incredible collection of antiques in New York City. I also bought that fishing basket. It's a Chinese fishing basket that's up top. This is a piece I really love. This is made in Puglia. I went on a trip to Puglia sourcing pottery, and I found this guy on a back street whose name is Fasano, which is the name of almost everybody in that part of Puglia. and I just think it's extraordinary. He works in the classical shapes, and we have a bunch of different colors at Reed Smythe, and I was really lucky that he was willing to work with me and let me carry his pieces and share them with my customers. Ever since I was a little girl, I've loved houses, and my mother and my sister can tell you I was obsessed with doll houses and wallpapering them, and my grandmother would needlepoint teeny tiny little pillows. And the dollhouse I had was a Georgian house, and I've always thought that was the most perfect platonic ideal of a design, because you have a center hall and you have these stairs going up, and then you have two big rooms on either side, and it just feels like it's got this great symmetry. So this is a Georgian revival house built in 1928. And when I walked into it, I thought, you know, one of the things I really loved about it is it just was intact. No one had opened it up to have a great room or to put the kitchen together with the living room. So it was really important to me and to John to keep that intact and to really work with the bones of the house, which we did. We changed very little about this house. And I remember we had this meeting in New York with our architect who was going to help us renovate it, and with these wonderful designers at Brock, Schmidt and Coleman, who at the time were in New York, but are now in New Orleans. And they were laying out a plan that was going to add a lot of square footage to the footprint. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, we have been living in 2,500 square feet, you know, for years with 3 kids, and one of them living in a tiny maid's room the size of a bathroom, and we don't want more square footage. So we really had a great time, and I'll show you as we walk around, just making sense of the existing space and figuring out how we could live happily in the footprint that was already here. I would call our style, because I think John and I are really aligned in what we like, as traditional with a twist. We both love old houses. We have never wanted to live in anything new. We love antiques, but we don't want to be too precious about it. So it was really important to us that this house have modern elements, you know, art that was not, you know, an oil painting from the 19th century, and a mix of kind of eclectic things. And it was also really important to me that we not install our house, if that makes sense. You know, people talk about the install day, and obviously we installed curtains, you know, carpets and all that, but it's been something that we've really collected over time. And you know, each time I see something when I'm traveling or at an antique show, or I've become addicted to live auctioneers and I troll it at midnight seeing if there's anything coming up for auction. But I think we both really appreciate the house that's layered and built over time. And even the renovations we've done in this house have been done over time, and you know, partially because of budget, but also just because living in a house and seeing how you live in it with your children and your friends and how you entertain, I think really informs additions and renovations. And we've really kind of added on over time, and I think it was a really good decision not to try to do it all before we moved in. This is one of my favorite spaces in the house, and I would say that in the summer and this time of year especially, we live out here. We love it. We eat dinner out here. We hang out and read out here. We have cocktails out here. This was built about 3 years ago after we'd lived in this house for a long time, and you know, about 10 years. And we originally thought we would build a screened porch, and then our brilliant landscape architect Ben Page said, no, you can't build something heavy and that matches the rest of the house. You need something that looks very French and very garden-esque. And one of the favorite things about this space is the ironwork. Ben designed it, and we have this amazing ironwork studio here in town, and they executed it, and I just think it's gorgeous. And in the summer, the roses, this teasing Georgia bright peach rose grows up it, and it's starting to kind of, you know, grow over the entrance to it. So I really love this. We wanted to make it casual and feel kind of like an old screen porch or an old porch where, you know, in the kind of South, you'd sit and have iced tea. And so we got real wicker and painted it this aubergine color. Again, as in all of my rooms, there's a lot of color going on, and sometimes I don't know if it works or not, but I think it's picking up on different elements of what's inside and then also what's outside in the yard. The table was purchased in Kentucky, and I'm not going to remember the name of the limestone, but it is a stone table. It cannot be moved. It is had to be brought in on a crane, but I love it. I love the way it sort of anchors the space and gives you a dining space and a sitting space, but nothing feels too crowded. This lantern I love. It's from England. It's from Jam, that beautiful lighting. And I have here under the lantern my very pitiful pelargonium collection. I'm so stomped by pelargoniums, and I want so much to be good at them and have, you know, those kind of leggy army things that everybody has in England. But these are my pelargoniums, and I've been trying, and this one's starting to look a little bit more like what I want it to look like. And then I'm very, very proud of this. I have a bloom coming on. I've been overwintering them and doing all of the things that they say to do. And I have them in one of Reed Smythe's copper trays, which are the handiest thing we sell. I use it for serving cheese and oysters, but in this case, it's being used for a tray to collect the water. I love the way this sideboard works for when we're serving dinner out here, and I love having lamps on a porch. It's so southern. It feels like you've created this outdoor room, and I just love these cloisonne lamps and how they add an element of home to this outdoor space. I love the way this house moves. I think that Georgian houses, as I said earlier, are so well laid out. There's a reason they have, you know, transcended time. Every room connects to everything else, and so whether it's having a party or whether our kids are running through it, well, when they were little, playing tag, or whether we want to have an indoor-outdoor event, it's just a house that connects. And we use every inch of it. There's not a room that we don't use, with the exception of my husband's Carriage house office, and that is off limits to the rest of us. I decorated that one myself, and it's kind of quirky, but no one gets to go there, but you guys are going to have a little sneak peek of it. Welcome to my husband John's Carriage house study. This room is pretty off limits to most of us. In fact, I don't think it's been dusted in months, but John graciously said that we could come in here and see how he works. John is a biographer, and he has written several books all on the American presidency and on American history. He is currently working on a book on Ike Eisenhower, so you are going to see a lot of books piled up about Ike, and he is deep, deep, deep in 1950 right now. He's written a book on Jefferson, on Andrew Jackson, on George H.W. Bush, on Churchill and Roosevelt. So he is just a prolific writer and a wonderful writer, and he just takes so much joy from his writing and from his love of history. And if you look around this room, which John and I designed together with a little help from Brockschmidt and Coleman, you will see John's collection of political posters and photographs of politicians. When John was young, he started at age 10 being obsessed with Reagan, and he campaigned for Reagan and got to go to the inauguration. But he's never been a Republican or a Democrat. He's voted on both sides of the ticket, and he's had this collection of stuff that he wanted to bring in the house. And I said, babe, this does not go with the rest of the aesthetic of the house. So these were in storage, and John was just adamant that we put them somewhere. And so he thought we would put them in our bedroom or in the attic, and I kept saying no. So I thought he needs a room of one's own. So we renovated this old Carriage house that was part of the property, and I think a driver and a housekeeper lived here in the 30s. It was really kind of a shell of itself, so we did a pretty big renovation. But what we wanted to do was create a real library, and so we created these stacks, and they, believe it or not, are organized by subject, and they have these library lights and all these great photographs. And then I came up with this idea of getting some busts, because John loves busts, of some of his great heroes. So we have here Washington and Douglas, Benjamin Franklin. Over here we have Hamilton, Lincoln, and Jefferson. I love the way the American flag looks behind Abraham Lincoln. And I just think about John in here, surrounded by all of the things that he loves, working on these books and kind of going back in history in his mind. And I think this is a great space for him to have as his own, to time travel. One of the collections that John has, and he has many collections, I think you can see it's a little crazy in here, is his photography collection. And when he was the editor of Newsweek, he was very good friends with a famous photographer who was Ford's White House photographer, a guy named David Hume Kennerly. And David has graciously given John and me all these incredible photographs from these historical moments. Some are, iconic, some are just things that John loved. But I love this one. I'm going to take it off the wall. It's George H.W. Bush doing the little thing over Barbara's head, Mrs. Bush's head. And we were so fortunate to get to know the Bush family when John was writing his book about George H.W. Bush. And they are just the loveliest people. So it's so happy to have this. And of course, there are the Fords and the Carters, and just a great photograph. This is an iconic photograph of Nixon at the Grand Ole Opry here in Nashville doing a yo-yo act. But one of my favorite photographs is a photograph of John Lewis, Congressman Lewis, on the Pettus Bridge, which many of you know. He and many of his fellow civil rights activists crossed on Bloody Sunday, and he, until he died, bore the scars of that day. So this is just this incredibly moving photograph. And John also wrote a book about John Lewis and published it just before he passed away. I love color, and I feel like color is really underrated these days. I look in magazines and I see these, living in a white room is fabulous for some people, but I just would never want to live like that. So color is really important to me. And when we were working on this house and the design for this house with Bill and Courtney Brockschmidt and Coleman, we started with this really fabulous piece of wallpaper by Adelphi Wall Coverings. They go into old houses and take pieces of 18th and 19th century wallpaper, and they reproduce the blocks, and you can custom color them. So I had this piece of orange horsehair fabric that I'd been having in a folder. I called it my New York City folder, which I would kind of dream about having a real house, because an apartment is not a real house. And I got my folder out and showed Bill and Courtney this piece of orange horsehair fabric, and we sort of worked around that piece of fabric to develop the whole scheme for the house. And I love mixing up unexpected colors and unexpected things. So I think you'll see throughout the house there are things that you might not put together, but I think work. This is our dining room, and it's one of everyone's favorite rooms in the house because it's really unique. It's round. And a lot of people think that we did this because of Thomas Jefferson and the shape of his house and his dining room. And also the color in here is actually taken from Thomas Jefferson's dining room, but we really did not set out to have a round dining room. We wanted to just have a square dining room, but because the kitchen was so tiny, and the original kitchen, and this room was so palatial with this sort of Napoleonic level table in it, we really wanted to scale down the dining room and scale up the kitchen, but we couldn't get enough space in the dining room given the construction of the house. So our architect came up with this brilliant idea and said, let's make it round, and we'll get more space on this side from the kitchen without interrupting the cabinetry and the refrigerator and all the things you need for a kitchen. Once we knew we were going to have a round dining room, we had to, of course, have a beautiful round chandelier. And yet again, I found this tall and crystal chandelier in New Orleans, and I absolutely love it. And it feels like it's just perfect for this room. We do not have a fine dining table. In fact, I'll tell you a secret that this is just a catering table that you can break down. And then we have a skirt that we had made and had some passe-moitié on the bottom. And I love it. I love having a table in the middle of the room that has a kind of softness to it. The table is set right now for dinner. I am having a dinner for a friend who is visiting from the UK, and I decided I would set it before you guys came so that you can see some of the china that I collect and some of the things that we sell at Reed Smythe, including this china. So this is an old pattern, an old English pattern by Davenport called Flying Bird, and I just love it. I think it's so, so pretty. All the daffodils are from my yard. These chairs were found in New Orleans. I feel like everything was found in New Orleans, but I love the way the blue velvet plays off this bright, bright yellow room. And this room is so happy. It has this great glow at night. We have candles and mirrors and, you know, the crystal from the chandelier, but it's just such a really joyful place to eat dinner, and it really inspires conversation. I think round tables inspire conversation, but then being embraced by this round room really makes for some great dinners. And we can seat up to 12 people in here, and then sometimes we add a table out in the entry hall if we have a bigger party. But I love this dining room. I was saying earlier that we were not intending to imitate Thomas Jefferson or his Monticello, but once we had this round dining room, we thought, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be cool to have this electric yellow color? I think this is called babouche. It's a Pharaoh and ball color. I'll have to check on that. But it is the same color, or at least similar to the color that is now in Jefferson's dining room, where we have been fortunate enough to have dinner because my husband was on the board at Monticello. And it was discovered later. At first, the room at Monticello was a kind of Wedgwood blue, but the archivist chipped down into the original layer and found out that, in fact, this would have been the color that Jefferson's dining room would have been painted in. And so we did make a little nod to Jefferson, but more than anything, we just love this color, and it's such a warm, great color. And then we painted the ceiling a little pale kind of blue-green, which also makes it feel more embracing at night. It's not that stark white. And it's just wonderful when the candles are lit and everybody's sitting around the table and enjoying dinner. One of my favorite things in this room is this painting that my grandmother gave me. It's a painting of her house in Austria. She was full Viennese and came to this country. Well, she was born in this country, but her parents came to this country in the years before World War I. And they moved to, of all places, the Mississippi Delta, because my great-grandfather was an engineer and worked on the levee project. But this was her mother's home. And if you can imagine moving to the Mississippi Delta from this beautiful place in Austria, you can imagine that there were some tough times adjusting. But I love this painting, and I love the little chickens in the foreground. This is one of my favorite pieces of furniture in the house. It's a Welsh sideboard, and the inlay is so pretty, but it's also kind of primitive. I just love this little circular inlay, and right here, it's in great condition. I found it at the Nashville Antiques Show, and I kind of built this little alcove to fit it perfectly. And then above it is hanging a painting that is of the Mississippi Delta, where I grew up. It's by a woman named Sheila Gurley, and she is also from the Delta, but it gives this kind of image of a stark piece of farmland or swampland, and it just reminds me so much of the vistas in the Delta, which is fully flat. And then I've put here for my dinner party these vases that we just got in from a UK potter named Charlotte McLeish. And I just love the stark, clean, white, classical forms. And I love the way they look with a little flower frog in them and the daffodils popping up so you can see the different varieties of daffodils that I have in my yard. So we entertain all the time, and my husband calls me an invite-aholic. So this house is filled with people, big parties, small parties, impromptu parties. So I think that the most important thing to me about this house and the way people feel when they walk in is I wanted them to feel it's warm and welcoming and not stuffy. We have rings on our tables from cocktails. We have red wine spills on our carpets. It is not a precious house. And sometimes people will come in and say, no, 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 I don't want to have a glass of red wine on your couch. And I think, oh my God, please, this is what the house is for. We live in every room. Our kids and our dogs, all over the couches, doing their homework, lying around with muddy paws. We don't live in a pigsty, but I want people to feel relaxed and just really welcome. We're on our way to the kitchen, but I wanted to show you the powder room because it's very special to me. The wallpaper is a Zubair wallpaper that was originally in the entry hall, but it was so water damaged and we couldn't salvage it. But we found this incredible paper hanger that was able to strip the different pieces off and assemble them into panels. So this was originally one panel, and it's a hunt scene and very popular in Nashville because it shows a fox hunt. And this house was actually owned by a family that was very, very big into fox hunting. And they actually had stables in the back and horses. But I love the fact that we were able to recreate this scene. Over here, there's a boar being chased by the rabid dogs and the hunters. So we kind of built this bathroom around the idea of preserving this paper. And then I have all of my children's baby cups in here because I had no idea what else to do with them. And people love to come into the bathroom and kind of look around at the cups and at the wallpaper. And I love that. I think it's kind of fun to have a special little secret place in the powder room. Welcome to the kitchen, the also center of the house where, everybody gathers for breakfast and dinner. We try to have family dinner, pretty much every night, even if I don't cook. The hood was made by a wonderful, wonderful metal worker here in Franklin, Tennessee, and I just think it gives this wonderful frame for the room. We decided to keep it white and have brownish cabinets, which I love. This is Pharaoh and Ball's Mouse's Back, and I just think it's really cool. One of the reasons we decided to do Mouse's Back was because of this chandelier that we found in an antique shop up in Connecticut. It was in a church in France, and I just love it. It's got this kind of whitewashy paint on it, or powdery paint on it, but I just think it's such a great addition to this kitchen. And then we found this table at a place in Atlanta called Star Provisions, and they had it in their restaurant, and I just fell in love with it because it's made with plumbing pipe. And I thought it was so cool and asked the guy, could you make one for me? And he said, yes, we have to wait to get some reclaimed barn wood, but it's really kind of like a chopping block, and we use it as a chopping block. We do put some lemon juice and vinegar on it after we use it to chop things, but it's such a practical thing. And then we always have flowers from my garden in the middle of the table, and my kids love that. I love the way this little atrium over here is fully papered, ceiling and all, with another Adelphi wall hanging paper. And I just love the way the black picks up on the black of the range, and it leads into this yellow dining room. We have this favorite print of mine. This is a Mississippi artist named Walter Anderson, and he lived during the 20s and 30s down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And he did these elaborate block prints, and the block prints still exist. He did not paint this, but the block was original to him, and I had it hand painted. But I think it's so cool. I can't remember which fairy tale it comes from, but maybe somebody out there will let me know. But anyway, I love my kitchen. I think I have one of the most random midlife pivots of anyone I know. But I'm also really proud of that because I think it's great to know that in midlife you can do something different. And all of my career, I worked in education. I started out as a teacher, and then I became really attracted to public education and education reform. And New York City was kind of lit up with education reform when I was living there and working in the trenches there. And I worked at a charter school in Harlem that I ran. I worked for foundations. And my last job in New York was working for the Department of Education under Bloomberg and Joel Klein, which was kind of the golden era of reform in New York City. And at some point, my colleague and I there came up with this idea that kids could learn to read on the newly released iPad. We saw great work going on in the classrooms all over New York City with teachers mastering the art of teaching reading. And so we learned a lot and knew a lot. I knew a lot from teaching myself about how kids learn to read. And the iPad was coming online right around that time. And so we developed a company that we started, and we put a reading program online on an app, and the company really grew and flourished. So I learned a ton about online business, subscription sales online, marketing online, advertising online and on social media. And when we sold that company to a slightly larger education technology company, I took my equity, moved on, and I was kind of at a crossroads, and I thought, do I want to go work for a foundation or do more in education, or do I want to do something more creative? Education is creative, but I'd always on the side, as my avocation, not vocation, arranged flowers, gardened. I love houses. I love decorating. I love finding treasures for the table. And my dear, dear friend, Julia Reed, who died about 4 years ago, came to me in that kind of transitional period and said, I want to start this business that is all about bringing artisan-made goods to the table, the house, the garden. There's so many things out there that are just add water. And we wanted to do something really cool. And I said, well, I'll help you. I would love to be involved while I'm looking for another job. And one thing led to another, and I kind of fell in love with it. And I realized I knew a lot from the 7 years I worked for an ed tech company. And Julia had so many ideas, and she had more style in her little finger than I think most designers that I know have in all 10 fingers. And she had these great ideas, and we partnered, and she said, I really want you to own this with me. I don't want you to be advising or just a bystander. I want you to be a part of the company, and I want your name in it. And so we both grew up in Mississippi in the same town, and our families were friends. She was 10 years older than me, so we kind of reconnected when we were both in New York. And my husband happened to be her editor at Newsweek. But we would spend hours and hours in New York planning parties and picking paint colors and figuring out how to arrange the best vase for the table. So we were kind of silly about it, but we kind of decided we would build a company around that. And we named it Reed Smythe, which is Julia's last name, and my maiden name, which is the name that comes from Mississippi. So it's called Reed Smythe & Company, and it's still doing today what we set out to do, which is to find great artists and artisans to make things for us, and to bring them into other people's houses so that they have a story to tell about something beautiful and handmade. So this is the sitting room. I call it the sitting room. My kids call it the TV room because it's the only place we have a TV downstairs, and they're not happy that it's not very big, but I don't know, I just don't like TVs. We have a huge TV in the attic, and that's it. But this one was originally off the dining room, and we hated that. We didn't like the dining room having this big gaping entry into another room. So we closed off the entry from the dining room and built all these bookshelves. And I think it's just such a cozy room. And this is where I drink coffee in the morning and watch Morning Joe. And my son comes home from college and kind of sets up shop in here. There's not anything really particularly fine or special in here, but I just think it's such a comfortable room. And we covered an old couch in white duck slip covers so that we can throw them in the wash, because our dogs, our two Springer Spaniels, Ellie and Clemmy, love to be in this room with us and hang out. So anyway, there's some great art in this room, actually. These two drawings were given to me by my darling friend Julia, who was my partner in business and who passed away 4 years ago of cancer. But these are done by her good friend, John Alexander, who is a very, very accomplished painter. And these are his drawings of a bird and a cat. And this is Julia's cat, who was named Sam. And my son is named Sam. So she gave this to me on the day he was born. One of the things I love about this room is the color we chose and the way it plays off the black and white stripe. This is a color, I do not know the name. It's by Fine Paints of Europe, and I think that they are defunct now. But it's an olivey, deep, kind of lichen-y color, and I just love it. It's such a cool color, and we really painted everything in it, in the room, in this color. It's very unexpected, not really connected to much of the house, but it does pick up on that same olivey color that's in the Adelphi paper in the hallway. So we did kind of think about that, but I love this color, and everybody who comes in this room is like, what is this color? And then of course I can't remember what it is, so I'll have to look it up. But I love the way it plays off these black and white, really geometric shapes on the windows, but has this kind of unexpected combination. And then I have my red pillows, so a lot going on, but I think it works. This is our study indoors as opposed to the outdoor study. We compromised in this room, and I get this side of the room and John gets this side of the room. So I get the kind of view from the living room, and John gets to have all of his mess over there. But we decided when we were building this room to have this enormous French eagle in the middle of this, what they call a rent table, because the rent table turns around like this. And in the 19th century, the idea was when the landlord was paying his workers, he would have his ledgers and his money in these little drawers, and then he would turn it around to let them collect their wages. I'm not sure why he couldn't hand it over the table, but we bought this table, and then we found this eagle, and we just loved it. And apparently there are eagles like this floating around France all over the place because Napoleon loved eagles, but we kind of thought of it as an American eagle. In here we've got all of these prints. Many are English, many are of people that we admire and John loves more than I do, probably. I mean, there's one of George Washington here. There's one of Queen Victoria. But both of us have been collecting prints for a long time. And over here, you can see we have another bank of bookshelves. And when John was writing a book about Jefferson, we had just moved into this house. And so I commissioned this painting of Monticello as a gift to him to congratulate him for doing, finishing the book. And it's painted by a Mississippi painter who actually does not live in Mississippi anymore, but named William Dunlap, who's actually quite well known. And I let him have carte blanche in doing the painting, and this is what he came back with, which I think is so interesting because most of the time people photograph or draw Monticello from the front entrance, and they do it in bright sunlight in spring, and he captured it in the snow at sunset from the opposite side. So I just love it. It's very unusual. This is a very special painting that is my painting, and it was done by George W. Bush. As I said, we were fortunate enough to get to know the Bush family, and George W. Bush, as many of you know, has become a painter in his post-presidential life, and he's quite a talented painter, and he's using his painting to draw attention to refugees and people coming back from war with PTSD and brain injuries and immigrants. So he has quite a prolific body of work. But we were up in Maine visiting the Bushes, and he had these paintings that he was working on where he would paint half of a side of paper and then fold it in half and open it up. And so I chose this one. He graciously gave it to me, and he only does that fairly infrequently, so I felt very, very honored to have that. So this is another really special piece in this room, and it is a portrait of George H.W. Bush by his son, George W. Bush, and as you can see here, he signed it. This was as a gift to John for finishing a book on his father. It was not an authorized biography by any means, but the family really cooperated over many, many years with the research. and I think they were quite pleased with the book. And this is a letter from George W. Bush that says 41, painted by George Bush, presented to John Meacham, December 2018. And it's just a very special piece of our collection. A lot of people love this color and they want me to give them the name of the color, but the color doesn't exist because we started with this wool fabric that we loved. I fell in love with this for John's study, and I loved kind of the red and blue and the kind of patriotic look of it. And we just took a swatch of the fabric to the paint store and copied it. And so we call it Meacham Blue. And fortunately, I have the formula for it, and I cannot tell you how many of my friends have their rooms painted Meacham Blue, because it's just a great color and it looks great with art. And in really bright light, it has a kind of green tint to it. It just depends on what your house looks like. But this was a sunroom, and it was, as you can see, it's very bright, big windows, and we did not want a sunroom because we had that little study, and so we decided to make it a study, but we didn't change anything about it except building a bank of bookshelves. So we thought this dark blue would help it feel more serious, like a study. But it was another example of us not wanting to interrupt the footprint of the house and, you know, overdo it. So we came up with this idea of using the columns that were, I'm sure, part of an open terrace before they closed it in. And we have these different prints, and they're hung together by chains. I had a wonderful, wonderful priest in New York who said, when we were very sad about leaving New York and when our children were really, really worked up about it, and he had this great line, and he said, "Home is where your family is." And I've always thought that was such a wonderful thing, because even though this is our home and it's this physical space, the most important part of home to me is the core 5 of us. And living in a house like this that we all love, and our kids say, "You'll never sell this house, you can never sell this house, this is our house." But I do think that it's an important idea that wherever you may go and wherever you may move, and plenty of families have to move and transfer for jobs or downsize, home is where your family is.
Hey Homeworthy, I'm Sophie.
And I'm Michael. Welcome to our home in Atlanta. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Michael Kaufman, and I'm the managing attorney of Kaufman Injury Law.
And I'm Sophie Kaufman, a social media marketer. Welcome to our home in Atlanta, Georgia. We have lived here for approximately 4 months, which I was very fast in getting everything kind of completed in the house. We are both originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and we lived in a 2-bedroom in Cabbagetown, which is a really cool, eclectic neighborhood in town. We have 2 kids. We were outgrowing our 2-bedroom. Our daughter was actually living in our dining room, so we'd been looking for a house for a few years, but as the housing market was getting crazier and crazier, we were kind of losing some of the momentum. But we both found this house, and it was the first house in years that we both naturally walked into, and we said, this is it. We were really lucky that with this house, actually, the owners wanted 3 months to stay in it, so we were under contract for 3 months. And I know that wouldn't work for some people, but for us, that gave me basically 3 months leeway to be able to design, order furniture, and all of the things to be able to get the home ready for when we moved in January.
Sophie and I both knew right away. We're both of the school of thought when home buying that it has to be the right house. Buying a house is a huge decision, and a lot of people do that. They kind of jump in because they need the place or they feel like it's the next logical step. We were very patient. Like I said, we were busting at the seams in our old place, but waited for the exact perfect house. And both of us feel like when you walk into a place and you know, and that's how we found this house, and that's how we decided to make an offer and get the place.
to our sitting room. So very similar to the rest of the house, we went with a traditional vibe, but wanted a modern take that still felt really inviting and fresh. So we have a lot of blues, greens, whites, and you'll see my favorite color, a pop of pink in every room. So we tried to mix match as much as we could. So you see we have the pink flowers here that's gonna go along with one of my favorite abstract pieces that I actually won in an online auction. I'm all about bamboo gold accents, so you'll see that majority of the picture frames that we have in the house have gold accents around, and I love mix matching frames. So I feel like being able to mix match art with different frames really elevates the space, makes it feel like it has some sort of vintage charm. And so again, talking about how the house has some character, whether we can do that through the crown molding in the house and be able to tie some of those accents with some of the molding with our picture frames is something that I spent a lot of time doing. These chairs are one of my favorite Facebook Marketplaces find. We love Facebook Marketplace, and by we, I mean me. Michael didn't even know that these chairs came from Facebook Marketplace. They just magically appeared for him. So I look at it every morning. We pick these up. I really love the linen texture with it because linen is very fresh. It's very summery to me. And more importantly, I wanted to pick fabrics that I could hopefully easily clean. And so with 2 kids, I wanted to have fabrics that I could easily spray and wipe. And thankfully this linen is a performance linen and was able to do so.
What's great about the linen and the colors that we chose for this, that Sophie chose for this room, is how well lit this room is. If you'll see back behind you, these windows let in all the morning light, and it's morning right now. So every morning we come in and come downstairs from sleeping, and this is kind of a very nice welcome to the day. We have little pops of, personal touches and flowers to give it a light, airy feel, and really love that about this place. You see the floral theme is everywhere. This is actually a television, by the way. We can make this this painting, any painting we want in the world, but we chose florals because it really ties in with the rest of the room.
Going back to the TV, we have the Samsung frame TV, and yeah, like Michael says, we're able to change the artwork as much as we want. And I have this hydrangea piece here because it feels like it fits with the spring and summer vibe that we have going on. But what's great about it is that we can change it at any time. I got these 2 cushions online actually from Amazon, and I loved, first of all, they were super affordable. I think I got both of them for $150. One thing that you will notice in the house is I mix match a lot of high-end pieces and low-end pieces. So while this Facebook Marketplace find was a little bit more pricier, this sofa is from Wayfair, that's a little bit more pricier. These pillows were from HomeGoods and were very, very affordable. These were from Amazon. These were also from HomeGoods. One thing that I do have in the house is a lot of fake plants. So I really spent a lot of time finding fake plants that looked real, because with 2 kids and a dog, again, I don't have a lot of time to be able to water everything that we have. So I wanted to find a lot of plants that still looked lively, and we were able to bring some nature to the space. And so this fig tree to me looks so authentic, and again, another Amazon find. And then going back to some of the artwork, so you will notice that a lot of the artwork has the same color theme as the house. So you'll see some blues, you'll see some greens, and then some pops of pink. And so all of the pieces that we have carry that same color palette. I love nude portraits, so I found this on Cherished. Cherished has amazing art if you guys are ever looking. And then our famous bunny art, because I'm a huge fan of that. I have a couple pieces throughout the house. So this side table is very special to me because my mom actually made the fabric. I was looking on Etsy all over for custom, round tablecloths, and they were very, very pricey. So instead we bought the fabric, got the trim, and she was able to sew it for me. I tie in, again, vintage charm with some new elegant pieces. So this was a vintage find. Nice candle. As Michael mentioned, we have a lot of family photos throughout the house to be able to tie into really, who our family values are and how we are. And then some of my favorite books as well. These were actually housewarming gifts, so I'm excited to be able to bring those into some of the decor. My other thing I wanted to share with you guys is I love chinoiserie. I want to be very mindful of how much of it, because I think it can go either way. You can either have too much of it or too little of it. This is a vintage candle that I found, and these are all from HomeGoods. So I love these ginger jars. You'll see throughout the house, I have ginger jars in different sizes. This was an extra large one, of course. And I put it down here, and then here too, ones that I have accenting the television. And then this fireplace screen that we have was, again, another Facebook Marketplace find. It was very rusted when I get it. In one of my projects before we moved to the house, spray painted and cleaned it. And I'm really excited for how it turned out. And the gold, again, complements the gold from our planter pot, and then the gold from the picture frames as well.
Now that we've seen the sitting room, let's take a look at the heart of the house, the living room. Welcome to our family room. This is where we spend most of our time. Like I said, it's the heart of our house. One of my favorite parts of this house is this custom bookshelf that was already built when we came here. I'll let Sophie tell you a little bit about how she was able to decorate this in her exact style.
Yeah, so the bookshelf was a challenging project for me because, as you can see, there's many different layers that go to it. One of my biggest things when I'm decorating is, again, thinking of a good color palette. So I'm sticking with a lot of greens, a lot of blues, and a lot of golds. So I was able to mix match a lot of pieces, and this one probably spent the most amount of time being able to outsource everything that I was going to get. So I found a lot of picture frames because I wanted to showcase our family photos. I have a lot of vintage books. Some of them were Michael's old law school books, and then some of them were ones that I just got from vintage shops. You'll see the ginger jars in various sizes again that I wanted to play throughout the home to be able to tie it into some of the other rooms. I have a lot of busts going on. I have the Staffordshire dogs. Those are something that I want to collect eventually and have a collection of them. They're very cool to me.
I think you already have a little collection going.
That's very true. And then I have fun story about the rocks is one time Michael and I were road tripping to North Georgia. We were in Helen and there was a rock gem store and I made him pull over and I was like, we need to get all of these rocks. And lo and behold, he said we wouldn't use them, but we are using them in our house. I feel like gems have good energy and I wanted to bring that into this room as well. I'm gonna walk over here. I was able to play with a lot of the hydrangea floral pattern that I have going on. So you'll see a lot of hydrangeas throughout the house. So I have this hydrangea press print that I have in both sides of the bookcase. This art, I actually just finished painting it this week and I was able to hang it up yesterday before the shoot. So I'm really excited to share that with you guys. One thing that I've really enjoyed about this house, I feel like I was able to get my creative mojo back. So I'm sure some moms can relate when you first give birth, go through postpartum and all of the things. You're so tied down, you're figuring out your new rhythm. And this year was the first year I was able to really feel like myself and start getting creative again, start drawing and start playing with interior design again. When we were looking for an ottoman, I wanted to have something that was able to come in the middle of the sectional, but also something that I knew my kids would jump on. My son loves jumping from this to this to this. So I actually found, again, on Facebook Marketplace, a $20 ottoman, and I was able to get it custom slip covered. So this is one of my favorite pieces, again, because I can just take the slip cover off if something spills on it and pop it in the laundry room and be able to bring it right back out.
The pillows, so my mom is also a really incredible decorator, and every few years she kind of refreshes and updates her house. And so the timing really worked out. We were very lucky that she had no more use for these, and they're such beautiful colors. We just had to have them, and we're fortunate enough for her to give them to us.
Yeah, and I want to show the colors of the pillow, again, tying into what I would say really makes a house come together is blending in colors. So the blues and the greens, again, match the rest of the house. We have some pinks and reds. So I tie that into these hydrangeas over here. And then if you come over here, you'll be able to see right behind the pillows this awesome ballerina painting that we have that also speaks to the reds. So that way everything looks blended and cohesive, but again, really playing into that fresh, inviting, natural light colors palette that I wanted to have going on. One of my favorite parts about this house are the French doors that open up to our pool area. I'm very excited to show that to you, but this has such an abundance of natural light coming in, so I really wanted to play with the lightness of the hues with this room specifically so that it always felt inviting, it always felt exciting. After a long night with my daughter, or if we're really tired in the morning, we just come down here, we cook breakfast in the kitchen, we sit and watch a movie, get ready for the day. And so I think I wanted this room to really feel inviting and bright and tie that in with all of the pieces that we have in the room as well. This is my favorite room in the house. As mentioned, we love to entertain, and I was so excited to not have my daughter live in our dining room and have a formal dining room to be able to host our guests. These chairs are custom lacquered. I got it from a small business in, I believe, North Carolina called Rail and Style. I am a huge fan of cabbageware, and so I was able to find these at Dillard's and really be able to play in some of the hues that we have going on with the house. So I thought that the natural rattan placemats play into kind of the linen fabrics that we have going on, that summer vibe that we want to be able to showcase when people come over. We have the pink hydrangeas because I love flowers, and then a lot of greens, blues, and whites. We also have linen fabric on the dining room chairs as well. I really loved these chairs because of the shape. I thought it was so unique, and also the circle plays into the circle shape that's in our chandelier. This chandelier is from Visual Comfort and was my splurge item. You can ask Michael. I was like, whatever we do, I want this chandelier. The old chandelier for the house was this modern fixture and really didn't feel like it was just too contemporary for what we wanted to have. And so these balls are just really, it's a show-stopping piece in my opinion. I'm gonna walk you over to our bar cart. The bar cart was from our old house, and I was really happy to be able to reuse the wood that plays off of this antique dining room table that we have. And you'll see more cabbage pieces because I love those. Michael can speak to this piece. This was something that we found at an old anthropology outlet.
The reason why Sophie's asking me to speak to this piece is because this is my one actual contribution to the decorating of the house. And we found this at the, what's the place
Anthropology
called?
outlet,
Yeah,
Final Cut.
Final Cut, which I think no longer exists. But I saw this piece from across the store and knew I had to have it. It was hanging up in our old house in the dining room. And here it is again. It's just a nice touch that luckily tied into the colors that we were using, the gold and the blue. And I love the figurine from it. I like to think of her as a Greek goddess from a long time ago, maybe the goddess of decorating.
Here we go. Oh, another reason again that we've mentioned that we love this house is all of the natural light that it has, and these French doors have been really great because we're able to have this in and out flex space when we're hosting our friends. So we're able to eat dinner here, have the natural breeze from the wind here. So this is kind of, I've never imagined having a dining room with a French door, but I'm really happy that we have that because we're able to see the action from the road while we're eating. And then one of my favorite pieces that I'm so excited to share with you guys is this Willem Skilling horse artwork that I found. Of all places, I found it on Craigslist. So I haven't been on Craigslist in years, but I was looking for this piece. There's an interior designer in Atlanta who actually matched the wallpaper with this piece, and I had saved it on my Pinterest board years ago, and I was really happy to be able to replicate that. These go for $11,000 and up, and I was able to find on Craigslist for $800 from somewhere in California. So their loss is my win.
Tell them about shipping it here.
Shipping here was a little bit of a challenge to be able to get it across country in an affordable way, but I was able to get it done. And again, because I had 3 months to really prep for the home, I was able to do the slowest shipping option to be able to get it. You will see my son's room has a lot of horse accents. So again, I'm blending a lot of pieces that really tell that storytelling. It's not just storytelling in one room, it's being able to have the story throughout the entire home. We have pictures of my kids. We have these vintage brass candlesticks, more flowers, and again, bringing in the pinks. So something that I do in every room, you'll see it. Pink is my favorite color, and I'm able to showcase that in a fun, traditional way. So historically, I don't think people really use pinks as a more traditional and classic color, but I feel like you could still bring it in a very elegant way.
A quick extra word about the candlesticks. Those were my grandmother's. Those were her Shabbos candles.
We're able to use those. I'm glad to be able to have her memory live with us through these candlesticks. And then this amazing walnut buffet was another Facebook place find. I wanted to find something that was a similar, wood color that would match the dining room table and then also our bar cart. And I think they all blend together very seamlessly.
Now we're going to take you outside so you can see our outdoor space.
One of our favorite places in the whole house. Come on. We had 3 months basically being under contract for the house. So I had 3 months to prep with all my PowerPoints and source everything I wanted for the home. Our last house was very eclectic, very colorful. I am naturally drawn to a lot of colors. I love the rainbow. I always have rainbow nails, but my style has very much evolved since becoming a mom. I've gotten a little bit older. And so for this house, I was very much drawn to a little mix of traditional. I love chinoiserie, I love grand millennial, but I also wanted a fresh and modern take on that. And so you'll be able to see throughout the house. There are a lot of blues, there are a lot of accent pieces that lean into grand millennial and chinoiserie with the greens, the blues, the natural whites. But I was able to bring kind of my own spin to it. There's still tons of color to be able to showcase our personality. We brought in a lot of accent pieces. We have pieces of heirlooms that were from his grandma's, from his mom's house. I had some amazing finds from Home Goods and Goodwill of all places to be able to bring the home together.
Sophie had an incredible vision going in. It was really fun to watch the whole thing come together and how fast it was.
Thank you.
Whenever we go and talk to people about the house, the first thing they say is, I can't believe how fast you put everything together. And luckily, like Sophie said, we had some time to plan and decorate before we actually moved in. So the day we closed, we were immediately ready to go. Sophie has a million ideas. She has such an incredible vision. My job was to kind of rein it in a little bit and say, maybe that's too much wallpaper, maybe that's too many.
Too expensive and not in the budget.
Maybe it's not in the budget. But I wanted to give her as much freedom as I possibly could because I knew that she would be able to bring this house to life, and she really has.
Welcome to our kitchen. So the kitchen is one of the buying focal points of the house, and we loved it so much. It has this big island, so we're able to sit here for dinner, we'll be able to cook, and I love the windows that go outside, so we're able to see if our kids are playing back in the backyard. I can still be cooking dinner, but then also be able to see everything that's going on in our backyard. With this kitchen, fun fact, when we got it, the house was very dark and muted, I guess you would say. So the kitchen was this very dark green, and all of the tile was this beige and brown tile, and it just really didn't fit the mood of who me and Michael were. So that was probably one of our biggest projects of the house. We painted all of the cabinets this amazing Pharaoh and Ball blue color, and then we updated the tile to be a traditional subway tile that would really blend in with that modern traditional feel that we're going for.
The paint that we used and the subway tile is the same colors that we used in our old house. So it was kind of bringing the old into the new. And I really love that feeling of nostalgia mixed with
familiarity,
with novelty.
Yeah, and again, you'll see hydrangeas throughout the house, fake ones, but hopefully they look real to you guys because I want the room to feel fresh and airy. We have some lemons. What I really, really love about the kitchen is all of the storage that we have. So again, with 2 kids, we have a ton of utensils, we have everything going on, and that we're able to kind of hide them and pocket them within the drawers. A fun fact about this kitchen that I'd never seen before is that we actually have 2 dishwashers. So we have 1 dishwasher here and 1 dishwasher over here.
I think one day I'm going to replace one of the dishwashers with a drink cooler. May be a better use, although we have used both at the same time.
Yeah, to me, having 2 dishwashers have been, kind of a game changer. Sometimes, when you're entertaining, you have more plates than you can wash. And so being able to have that flexibility has been really great for us. You'll be able to see some of the chinoiserie patterning that I love throughout the kitchen as well. So with some of the vases, some of the kitchen utensils, and then some of the pots as well. I'm going to show you guys my favorite salt and pepper shakers because I mentioned I really love those Staffordshire dogs, and I found them in salt and pepper shakers.
Something that's really cool about the kitchen is these windows that rotate out. This way, during the summer, we can call the kids in for lunch or dinner without having to go outside. It lets in the summer breeze and keeps the air conditioning in at the same time.
And over here we have a fun little wet bar that we use for all of our entertaining. So we get to hide all of our fun glassware pieces here. We have alcohol underneath. I have some of our surprise hydrangea cups that we're able to use whenever we just want to pop on the patio and have a glass of wine. And you'll see again some of those chinoiserie elements, our art with the gold accent pieces, and forever going to have picture frames of our kids so we can be reminded of how cute they are. And right off of our kitchen, we have our powder room bath. This is a small but mighty bathroom. Again, kind of going back to what the house looked like, it was very beige, it was very brown. The mirror was this dark brown color, and I was able to paint it a color that matched the wallpaper, and it tied in with some of the brass accent pieces. One of my favorite parts about it, you'll see, is the towel holder, and then also the light fixture that we have up on the mirror. Both of these were very affordable finds, but look very high end. The towel holder, I think, was under 20, and the light fixture was under 100. And I was able to transform this entire powder room for less than $500 with everything included, but really elevate it to make it a wow space when people go to the bathroom when they come over and hang out with us.
I'm a personal injury lawyer, and I've known that I wanted to be a personal injury lawyer since I was a little kid. When I was young, about 12 years old, I went to my first trial, and it was the trial of a man who was catastrophically injured in a medical malpractice event. And the moment I knew I wanted to become a lawyer was when they called him to the stand, and he was profoundly injured. He was paralyzed, everything except for his eyes. And they called him to the stand, and it was blink once for yes, blink twice for no. They asked him one open-ended question, and that question was, what do you miss most about your life before you were injured? And he blinked out his answer, 1 for A, 2 for B. And after several minutes of doing this, the answer was, I miss laying in bed next to my wife. And that moment was so powerful. I remember it so well. And it drove me to go to law school and become a lawyer so that I could also help people who have been seriously injured and put their life back together after terrible events.
And one thing that I really respect about Michael's job is, attorneys have very long hours, and we're at this stage in our life where our kids are very demanding and bedtime is very important. And so I really respect that he has valued his time and that he cuts off normally around 5:30 and is able to help in and do bedtime, because I read all these Instagrams at 0 to 5 years are like really, monumental periods for your kids, and we want to be there for that. So we're both really lucky that he's able to dedicate his time to both helping people as a lawyer and then also being a good father. I do social media marketing, so I went to University of Southern California after going to UGA. Fun fact is that Michael and I have been dating on and off since we were 16, so we are semi-high school sweethearts and have known each other for over half of our lives and really have grown up together. And so we both were at UGA, and then when I was at USC, he was in law school, and we both had our school schedules that we were able to see each other all the time. When I was at USC, that's when Instagram and social media started picking up, and I really got into and saw the power of community building and storytelling. And so I realized I had originally studied journalism, but I basically switched journalism into digital marketing with social media. And since then, I have worked at a couple of companies. So I worked at magazines, I worked at Glamour when I was in college, I worked at Spanx and managed their social media, I worked at agencies here, and now I'm managing social media for a fashion company, and I help brands with any B2C marketing that they have in direct to consumer. And I'm lucky that I work remote. So again, I'm able to be here for my kids and be able to, balance that full-time mommy life with our family. And welcome to my laundry room. Laundry rooms are generally really boring. This one originally was. It had black tile, was painted a beige color, and the cabinets were a gray color. I really wanted this space to feel fresh and fun. Doing laundry is kind of a mundane task, and I wanted to have it have a little bright pop of hue so that I would feel good when I was doing the kids' laundry and my laundry every week. So my favorite part is this tile. It plays very much into the rest of the colors of the house. It is a penny tile that has rosette floral patterning with blues and whites. We were able to paint the cabinets right here. I have some hydrangea flowers to be able to lighten up the space. And I was really able to play up some of the storage with how we keep our laundry pods, some towels whenever you need it when we come from the pool, and then our 2 laundry fixtures. And one of my favorite parts is this calendar that we actually have that really plays into our family calendar that we have going on. We know that we have tons of activities, we have work events, and so the calendar helps us stay very organized with what's going on.
Welcome to our backyard entertaining space. This is one of the best areas of the whole house. We have room for at least 6 people, and we've fit as many as 15 people here. A few weeks ago, we had all of our closest friends over for, somebody came to the house and did hibachi. It was like an incredible evening. The backyard is actually turf, so no mowing, just blowing, and it stays green all year round. What I really love about back here is the canopy of trees. We have bird song all throughout the day and an incredible array of shrubs and beautiful flowers. We have hydrangeas and rhododendrons and azaleas. And it's just a really nice, tranquil place to hang out and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, to me, this is a total backyard oasis. We're able to host our guests here at our big dining room table. We're able to overlook our pool. As Michael mentioned, there's tons of trees, and so it's just very private. And so even though we're in the heart of Atlanta, we're in town, we really feel like we're secluded here. I'm able to go to the pool. If I wanted to skinny dip, no one would see me. And we have, such an amazing entertaining space both up here and then downstairs. We have a fire pit with a s'more station. We have the pool lounge chairs. And a fun story is, because I've known Michael since we were in high school, I came to his house one time when we were in high school and I saw his mom. I came over and she was just, passed out at a pool having her voob. And I was like, that lady is living her best life. And I was like, I want to live like that one day. And never would I think that I'd be able to live that dream. And so I'm very grateful that we're able to have such an amazing backyard that I can just escape to when the kids are at school and I just need a few minutes to myself, just lounge, get my UV rays, and be able to have a good afternoon, honestly.
And if you'll follow me now, we'll head downstairs to the pool. So when we were looking for a house, we never thought that we didn't need a pool, but when we walked in here and saw it, we knew that we had to have this place. And something unique about this pool is that it has a full-length swimming lane that I have not used yet, but plan to as soon as the weather gets a little warmer.
Yeah, we're actually planning on heating up the pool this weekend, and so we're excited to give this swim lap a little test. But I would say I've never seen a pool shaped like this. I think it's a very unique attribute to the house. As soon as we saw it, we were like, why does the pool look like this crazy T? This is also one of the biggest pools we've seen. A lot of, when we were looking for pool guys to hire, they were like, I've never seen a pool so big. We have this main pool area here and then this really long swimming lap, and we're excited to use it all summer long. We have these lounge chairs over here and also this fire pit area. So we have two entertaining areas that we can have. The lounge chairs here, I wanted again to tie in the blues, the stripes, and very this traditional style. One of my favorite hotels in Miami is the Confidant, and they had striped umbrellas and pool chairs. And I'm really excited to be able to bring that kind of hotel experience life to our backyard. So these are from Ballard, and then I got a fringe umbrella. And so I think it gives it a little bit of a more elevated feel to a traditional backyard feel. And welcome to our primary bedroom. So this bedroom was a showstopper for us, and we had really loved the downstairs, and we were like, I'm really liking this house when we were touring it, and then we came upstairs and we were like, this is it. We've never been able to have a true primary suite, and we feel like we finally have this little piece of heaven that we're able to escape to every night. So the headboard, I really wanted a Serena Lily style, nautical style headboard, but a lot of them were 10,000 up. I was able to find someone to custom upholster it for me. So I found the fabric at Ballard Outlet. Again, it plays into the blues that we have going on. I got custom pillows that matches the custom window curtains that we have here, and playing in surprise, more hydrangeas. Can you tell that that's my favorite color by now? This settee was something that I really wanted to fit the space, just to have a little sitting area underneath our Samsung Frame TV. Again, I love that I'm able to change the artwork out kind of depending on what the mood I'm in. This over here is actually my workstation. So Michael can talk about this chair. I believe you had it in your childhood home, right, from your mom?
That's right. If you'll notice, the fabric matches the pillows from downstairs, and my mom had no space for this chair. We got it, and
now it's my office desk chair. So here's where I work. This again was another Facebook Marketplace find, and I have pictures of my kids to motivate me throughout the day. Bow accenting is also something that you'll notice throughout the house. I have a lot of bow accents, mainly in picture frames. I really like shabby chic style, but I don't want to overdo it. And so I think this is just kind of like a nod to shabby chic and also kind of a Versailles French style. Here, as we go and talking about more of custom framing, so this is a floral piece that I had with an amazing custom frame. Again, I love mix matching frames because I really feel like it brings character to a home. And you'll see that in our bookshelf. So another thing that we really like about the house is this room also had custom bookshelves. So it's very similar to how I styled our downstairs bookshelf. There's, the ginger jars, we have the family picture frames, and then I also have a lot of vintage pieces that I'll show you.
And two more dogs. I think that makes a collection.
You're right,
4
two more
pieces.
Stafford style dogs. So I would say that I already have a collection going on. So a lot of these vintage pieces I have, had and just kind of outsourced throughout going to Goodwill, going to antique markets, and I was really excited to be able to showcase them. At our old house, we had one built-in bookshelf in our dining room, and being able to showcase my personality in our primary is something that I'm really excited to have throughout this bookcase. And fun fact is when I go to vintage stores, I really just open books and look for the colors, and then I go back home and I find some of the title names, and it's really fun to go back and say, oh my God, I didn't know that what this book said, because some of them have some really funny titles. These mohair chairs are, I would say, a little bit darker pieces than I would traditionally have in the rest of the house, but I really feel like it blends very well, especially I was able to get gray here and then match some gray with the settee fabric right here. These pillows are, I believe, Holly Hunt fabric. Again, another gift from my gracious mother-in-law. Thank you so much. And this is just a really nice place for us to sit. The kids can be watching TV, watching a movie in their bed, and Mike and I can just hang out here. Our side tables that we have here I wanted something that felt very airy, similar to kind of that linen fabric that we have. Scallop details is something that I'm a huge fan of. If you ever see scallop furniture, I'm probably going to go buy it because I love it so much. And so we have these two nightstands that's able to play into kind of that fun, I would say childhood-like feeling with scallops. You'll see some scallops in my daughter's room shortly. We have more bow accents that kind of match the mirror that I have going on. More hydrangea prints that I was able to actually outsource from an artist on eBay. And then heirloom photos is something that I get with my children every year, and so I'm happy to be able to really have the space to be able to frame those. And then our master bed, as I mentioned, these matching pillows match our curtains and really tie everything together. This chandelier is actually from our old house. It was in the dining room, and I was really nervous about bringing it into a primary bedroom because it is such a statement piece. I didn't know if it would fit the space or it would kind of look too avant-garde, but I really love how this chandelier fits into the space. It elevates it into a way that I think is not as normal that you would see in a primary bedroom, but one of my favorite light fixtures in the house.
Moving the chandelier was a complete ordeal. When we were uninstalling it, we found that it was hanging by a single thread on the screw. And our friend who helped us take it down was like, it's a miracle it never fell. All of these pieces are individual pieces of crystal. And so getting it from one house to the other was quite the challenge, but we were able to do it with no loss. All the pieces remained intact and got it up without a huge problem.
And then off our primary bedroom is our primary bathroom. Come and see it.
Now we'll show you around the primary bathroom.
So this room is truly a dream for us. In our old house, we had a very small primary bath. And when we walked in here, we were like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we get to live here. We learned that the house has, this room specifically has heated floors, which is a really good added bonus.
A great surprise when we were standing here barefoot and I said, my feet are warm, and then found the control for it and figured out that we actually had heated floors. Didn't know that when we bought the place.
Yes, and what we updated here was really just the wallpaper. Thankfully, the mirrors and the light fixtures were already here and we were fans of those. I mentioned the gray in our primary bedroom, and it ties into the gray that was just organically here. And so I'm excited to be able to tie those colors in. This wallpaper was, not me and Michael's biggest argument for the house, but our biggest pain point.
This was totally our biggest argument for the whole house. I was under the impression that I wanted no wallpaper in the bathroom. I wanted a very clean, tranquil, serene area. And Sophie was very adamant about the wallpaper. She said it will look great, just trust me. And finally I did, and she was right and I was wrong.
My favorite words to hear. There was a house
but the place looks really great.
Yeah, the house that, there was one house that we made an offer on before this that I was a huge fan of, and they actually had wallpaper in the bathroom. I had never thought of it, and it was a very similar chinoiserie, Oriental style, very busy, and I just loved the way it looked. And so when I saw this bathroom, I was like, we have to bring that to life. And Michael loves taking his baths, and he's like, I just want a very serene and tranquil, bathroom that I can just hang out in. And to me, I was like, how's the wallpaper going to impact that? We have an amazing view of our pool outside. We have this great bathtub. And so I think it really elevates the space. And honestly, this wallpaper outside of the dining room, this is my second favorite wallpaper in the home. Another thing that I really love about this bathroom is that we have a steam shower and then this amazing bathtub I mentioned. It overlooks our bedroom. And then when you're laying in the bathtub, you can just see forest. And so it really feels like your own little tree house when you're in it. I know I mentioned earlier kind of the bow accent, so you'll see that throughout a lot of the rooms here. So found this mirror that really ties into the kind of Versailles French shabby chic style that I've been talking about. And so I was excited to find that little piece for the bathroom wall here. What do I love most about this home? Everything. Again, coming from such a small space, I realized how much of a toll it was taking on me emotionally and kind of mentally being so cramped in the space. But I very much love that the house has heart into it. You can see every corner. I truly have poured in my heart and soul with the pieces that I've picked out, the artwork that I hand selected. I really love the stories that it tells. My daughter's nursery is the dream nursery that I always wanted to give her, but I wasn't able to give her until she turned, 20 months. So I feel like I really blended everyone's personality really well, down from Michael's office, our master bedroom, my daughter's room, my son's room, the powder room when I think about guests coming in, how they're gonna feel when they come into the powder room, and down to the laundry room where, that's generally not a room that people like being in. No one really likes doing laundry and folding it. So I was able to add some really fun tiles and colors so that when I do laundry, I feel a little bit more upbeat for doing these mundane day-to-day tasks.
My favorite part of our house is the primary bedroom. We, in our last house, had a very small space with bifold closet doors.
Which wasn't fun.
Now we've got the high ceilings and a steam shower and a beautiful big closet where we can actually fit our clothes. So I had gotten rid of most of my clothes when we were living at the old place because they just didn't fit anywhere. And now I can build up my wardrobe a little bit more. Welcome to our daughter's pink princess room.
So this is our daughter Goldie's bedroom, and it is truly my dream nursery. Our daughter just turned 2 years old, and I think everything I've ever wanted in a room has vomited into this place. You will find lots of floral accents, you will find lots of bows, you will find lots of pink everywhere, checkered gingham, and so I'm really excited to show you this space. This is a set of 8 floral prints, was another Facebook Marketplace find, and one of my favorite art pieces that I have. I feel like it really complements the Colfax and flower wallpaper that we have here. And I mentioned how I love scallop detailing pieces. And so this dresser I was able to find on Facebook, surprise. And I bought these scallop edge trims from Etsy, and we were able to bring it and then repaint it. So it looks like a true vintage piece, but one of a kind that's only my daughter has. More bow pieces and some of the picture frames and her lamps that we have here. I love gingham, and so I was really excited to be able to bring in these pink checkered curtains that we have for her. One thing that I really feel like ties this room together is how I was able to paint the trim with the floral wallpaper. I had never thought about painting trim, and I had seen it on Instagram and Pinterest from other designers. I really feel like that elevates the space and ties everything together. And so I spent a long time figuring out what color I wanted it to be, and I'm really happy with how this turquoise mint plays off the colors in the room. Here's her crib. We have more bird art that I love from Cherished. So I'm really excited to share this chair that I found. I actually found it at Goodwill a few weeks ago. It was a very dark brown color. I saw it and I just really loved this kind of whimsical design that it had. And so I painted the chair, and then you'll see some floral detailing here. And I just really felt like it felt like her room. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I need this for Goldie's room. And then this bed, I'm sure moms can relate. Sometimes my daughter doesn't sleep well. And also this is kind of our interim guest bedroom. We have this queen bed here. This is an amazing spindle bed from Beautiful Bed Company that we had in our old guest room. I was able to get matching pillows with the wallpaper, and then this great linen comforter from Laura Park Designs. You'll see more of that scallop detail that plays on her, her dresser. And then these 2 really great ballerina pieces. I want my daughter to be a ballerina. I want her to have fun with dance, and I painted those for her. And so I thought above the bed was the perfect place for that. And then her bathroom is truly a little girl's dream. You'll be able to see some bow detailing, more gingham, the shower curtain matches the curtains that we have, and then some artwork that I recently just framed for her. This bow mirror went viral on TikTok, and I was very excited when I had a friend find it, probably 30 minutes outside of Atlanta, but I was like, I need this for Goldie's bathroom. And so this again was a very simple update. Painted the trim pink, updated the wallpaper, and then everything else was original to the home, but was able to make it like a fresh, new, beautiful space within a very good budget, and it's very unique to her. And one fun fact is our cleaners always bejewel the toilet paper, and they always match the color of the jewels to what's going on in the room, and so she has these fun little floral jewels with her toilet paper. Yeah, that's it.
Let's check out our 4-year-old son's room.
So this was our son's big boy room. So when we moved to the house, we transitioned him from a crib into a bed. I went back and forth between twin beds or a queen bed, but ultimately figured we love to entertain. He has a lot of friends. I know he'll sleep over, and one of his favorite pastime activities is just jumping from one to the other. This room is very traditional in the sense of the colors that we have. I mentioned that I have the horse downstairs, and I have the horse prints all here to be able to play into that kind of storytelling and nostalgia of the horses. These were all vintage prints that I found, more horse statues, again, from vintage shopping. This was an antique dresser that we just had repainted. And here he just started baseball for the first time. So here's his fun little pick. And we have this blue chair that I was able to source with an old horse needlepoint. This is where we read all of his books at night. I mentioned that I love gingham. I have checkered prints in Goldie's room, and so I custom upholstered these headboards from Rail and Style and had matching pillows done. One thing is, if you can afford it, is I love being able to tie in the same fabric with pillows and curtains or a bed. I really feel like it elevates the space. And then I matched it with these cool Etsy baseball prints because our son is a huge baseball fan above his room. And then we'll walk into his bathroom. This is also a very traditional bathroom. I have the checkered print again, surprise, that matches what's going on in the outside. And then I found this stripe wallpaper from Home Depot of all places that was, I think, only $11 per roll. But I love how timeless this looks. I really wanted to create a room, even though he's 4, that he can grow up and be proud of when he's a teenager and not want to change it out. So for this, we just painted the cabinets blue. This blue actually matches the same blue that our front doors, and that's also in our laundry room. So you'll see a ton of the same blue colors throughout the home because I just really love that color, and be able to paint the mirror here. So this is a very easy renovation project, but really elevates the space with just a couple of cool accent pieces like this vintage horse art, a fun shower curtain, and then a splash of color with the paint. Home means to me really just a place that we can come down and be ourselves. So when we bought this house, we actually wrote the owners a letter, which I know some people don't like doing, but we wrote them a letter, and after we submitted our offer, and we said, this house feels like us. It is the place that we want to have our happy moments and our low moments. So they also had 2 kids, our previous owners of the home, and we said, down from the diaper changes to their first steps and the big milestones, we see ourselves here. And for that, that's what I think of what a home is. It's what you're building all the memories on and how you're growing as individuals and as people.
For me, home is a feeling. It's where your loved ones are. It's the place where you feel safe and secure. It's where the beautiful little moments happen. And home can be anywhere. This house really has, in the short time we've lived here, immediately felt like home because we've had so many beautiful moments from the very beginning.
Homeworthy, it was so great having you here in Atlanta.
But now you have to go.
Bye-bye.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Keelan Kane here in Lake Forest, and welcome to my home.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Kaylin Kane of Kaylin Kane Design. I'm an interior designer here in Lake Forest, Illinois, and welcome to my home. My husband and I lived in Chicago for 15 years, and I always wanted to live in Lake Forest. It's known for its architectural preservation and beautiful land, and it's a little bit further from the city than other suburbs. And we've stumbled upon this house, and it's on a quiet street. I always say, this is the smaller houses of Lake Forest, and we love it here though. It's quiet, it's right by Lake Bluff, it's right by the beach. You can take your dog everywhere. It's such a different pace than the city. And so we've really enjoyed finding this little tiny home. It's 2,200 square feet, and it's white stucco, and it's small enough where I feel like I can touch every room. Well, welcome to the living room. This is the front living room right when you enter my home. It's a long kind of rectangular space, so I added some chairs. We have this great coffee table from Ballard, but I had it reupholstered in this mohair because, as I said, we have a lot of little ones who like to hit their face, always jump on this, and it's perfect for kids. Also, this is Bear. He's going to be with us the whole tour. He loves to be with us, so if you see him around, that's Bear. All right, so these chairs I found at an estate sale. They're recovered in a Pindler. I love finding, upholstery that's been maybe at an estate sale or a thrift shop and then redoing it. It could save tons rather than purchasing direct and having COM. So I added the little skirt on there for some granny chic kind of millennial vibes. This piece here I found in Milwaukee at an estate sale. I loved the marble countertop on it. I think it is such a nice statement, even if, you know, it's a little old and tattered. I think marble looks better when it's a little stained and old. I made these beautiful lampshades by Vaughn, a paper flower that I got on Cherish. I love those because they never die like the other flowers. We have drapes in here that we added some Samuel & Son trim to. I'm a big tassel gal these days. I think they can dress up any solid panel. We went with pink because I recently painted all of the trim blue-gray by Farrell & Ball. We went with high gloss because I have been really into the high gloss, color drenching, and I just love how luxe it looks. So we added some fun pillows. I'm into the balls these days. These are a famous Lee Joffa pattern. Let's see, this again, another estate sale find. I needed kind of two smaller pieces, and I'm really into the dark mahogany colors mixed with a little rattan. This wallpaper is a Philip Jeffries wallpaper, and it's made to look like sisal grass cloth, but it's actually a vinyl. So a lot of handprints, a lot of finger touching, always, and it's very wipeable for my little kids. So this long rectangular room called for a very specific size of rectangle rug. And I love these jute carpet tiles that you can hand sew together and create any length and width that you need. The texture's kind of hard, so I love to layer like a traditional rug on top for some warmth. And in this case, I did it just to add a little softness because my 1-year-old likes to be on the ground a lot. And over here, we have a frame TV that I've had for a long time. It was probably one of the first frame TVs. So now I don't think it's as skinny as the new frames. The new frames are like on Ozempic. This is like old school frame. So we had it on this wall, but I've always wanted maybe a built-in, but to add some interest and like cover up some of the negative space, I had these Portuguese plates that I hung to kind of accentuate the space. So this is one of my all-time favorite chairs. It's the Laurel chair from John Roselli. And it's upholstered in this John Robshaw fabric, and it's so comfortable. It's like an easy spot to just sit down, and I, wait for the bus to come with my kids. But it fits little petite people, so it's one of my all-time faves. This kind of leads us into my office, which is this way, and it's kind of separated. This was here when we moved in. These columns were white, and I think they were kind of a 90s addition when they bumped the space up. But recently we painted them in this gray blue by Farrell & Ball in the high gloss, and I think it kind of it hides them almost, like more camouflage. The white really stuck out to me in this kind of like, I don't know, Venetian kind of way, but this I feel like just made it kind of go away a little bit. So we added that detail about a month ago. All right, so this is my office. As I said, I do interior design, and this has always been kind of just a spare room. It's been many things, like a game room, and it still is. Sometimes we'll sit here and do puzzles with the kids, or they'll play a board game. But I also keep my samples in here, which is a main cabinet for me. And it's quite messy inside. But what I recently did, I added these panels just to hide anything that was happening inside. So this fabric is Sister Parish. It's one of my all-time favorite prints. And I had it left over from a job, and I thought, perfect, I'll hide some of my sample mess that lives in here. So sometimes I scheme in here, so I'll take all of these samples that are in here. I'll show you even though it's a little messy. I'll take all of my samples from this space, and I'll lay them all out for client projects, and I'll pin them on these boards. So it's kind of interesting because this is my office, but it's also one of the first things when you walk in my door. So I kind of tuck them on this wall, and I'll pin up things that I find inspiring. Sometimes it could be a place, a person, it could be someone's hair or their outfit, fabrics, wallpaper. This wallpaper came from a project I'm working on in Green Bay, designed by David Adler, and it was all over the pool house, and we ripped it down, and I framed some for my client, and then I have the little ladies pinned up there. These chairs I found in an estate sale, and I loved the cane on them. I need to have real cushions made. But I also loved the talon feet And they're so impractical. There's no like you can't really sit in them. I think they probably would break, but I just thought they were adorable. The black chinoiserie does it for me. Wallpaper in here is one of the first things I did when we moved in. I thought it was very like forest coming from the city. It's a wallpapery is the name of the brand, and it was very reminiscent of those very pretty papers from like Georgian and Schumacher and Akale. So it was super reasonable, and I think it kind of makes the room without adding any art. And then these, so our window depths are very deep. So I think originally they had vinyl blinds when we moved in, and it was crazy. So we just put in these Bali blinds, and I liked the natural texture with kind of this like very fussy formal wallpaper. I think it kind of brings it down a notch without being too formal. And this balloon shade, my favorite drapery workroom, I have to give her a shout out, Anne from Utopia Workroom made them by hand, and she brought them here this week because I said, Homeworthy is coming. Can you please bring me a shade for these nugget windows? These nugget windows, I think they were also like a very big thing to put in the city or in the 90s, and we have a few. We have a few in the house. So I think this kind of hides it. I would never put a long drapery panel on such a small window, but this little balloon shade just kind of makes me happy. And it's not silk like in the 80s. It's a tiny pinstripe, and I think it kind of adds like a nice juxtapose. Also, this light came with me from Chicago. It came from the Bradley showroom in Atlanta. One of my dear friends, Michelle Bradley, gifted it to me for my wedding. So I love this one. This is Lucy, it's her name, from Bradley. So this table skirt came with me. What did I have this made for? I had it made for something specific, and it wasn't even for this table. This table is vintage, but I found the fringe on Etsy. I think I needed it in a pickle, something else where I was rushing around to get something, and it was in coral, and I had it, and I forgot about it, stained the one that was originally made for this room. That was not coral, it was like white, but stained it because we have 3 kids, and that's what happens with everything I own. And found this one and put it right on there. But I loved the skirted table. It hides anything. It could even be like the ugliest table in the world, and you'd have no idea. So I love a skirted table all day. The house was a bungalow built in the 40s, and then they bumped it up in the 90s. And so a lot of the architectural elements seemed 90s. A lot of crown molding, a lot of trim, all of the elements were missing from historical projects that I typically like, or typical historical homes. So we had to add a lot of detail to kind of bring it back to something that was maybe from the 40s. It was a labor of love when we first moved here, but I thought, how fun would it be to do some renovations on a more 90s home, because a lot of the renovations I would typically like to do are on historic homes. So we kind of rolled it back. The kitchen was very 90s. We kind of just gave it a facelift. This was a labor of love. I feel like it evolved over a couple years right when we moved in. The kitchen cabinets were here when we moved in, and it had a soffit, which no one does anymore, and it had fluorescent lights underneath the little tiny cabinets under the soffit and granite countertops. So the first thing we did when we moved in, I knew I wanted to give it a facelift, but I didn't have $100,000 to get a new kitchen. So we updated the hardware to this patinaed brass. So this brass is a living finish, so it'll patina over time. And I like the patina, but sometimes, it'll show marks, fingerprints, oils, and get darker with age, which I really like. The cabinets were white. We just did a white countertop, and then we ripped out the soffits, ripped out the lights, and I had my contractor make these shelves for us, which, was a minimal cost to cabinetry. And then we added this really pretty gallery rail to give it some interest. The brackets, I think, were from Amazon. Worked out really well. And then over here, this was a wine rack with a trellis, very 90s style, and it was broken. And I was like, oh, what are we gonna do? There's no place for a microwave on the counter. So I found this little vintage guy. stuck it on there, and then we had this space, so I added a little bit more gallery rail. And it worked out for little cookbooks, and although my 1-year-old always opens this up, and now he's been putting things in there, but I feel like the space called for something small to be stuck in here, so it worked out. We also, this was a desk, a very 90s desk in this area, and I said, oh, rip it up. I don't want a desk in the kitchen. It doesn't make sense for how we live now, and then there's no floor underneath. So last minute change, my contractor built this bench that now I feel like we could use a paint job because it's been 5 years. But we added a bench, put in a cute Schumacher fabric cushion with some pillows, and it's been awesome because my kids will sit here and tell me about their day, why I cook here. This range was here when we moved in. I had very different lights. I think these lights came from Wayfair 5 years ago, midst of COVID. They were in stock and ready for me to purchase. And we did the same thing here. We kind of added a shelf, mimicked this little picture rail around it just to frame it up, give it some interest. Although now I'd love to take it out and put just like a countertop shelf. That's my next move when this gets ruined completely. So I always think shelves are hard to style. What are you gonna, this is a lot of shelf space to style. So I found these antique cabbage plates at an estate sale. And they've always reminded me of like super preppy, like old school kind of Tory Burchy ladies. So I thought, oh, these would be fun just to put up here for some interest. And I love to collect silver from estate sales. I put these geraniums in here. And I love just vintage cutting boards. I think collecting things and stacking in a space can add interest. So I'm a big collector. And notice there's a difference between a hoarder and a collector. I'm a collector and I do let things go, but I do like to start a collection and save it for a while. When we moved in, this sink was not a farmhouse sink. And I thought, I just want to live like we're in the country, but we're not. We're in a suburb, but I wanted to live the country life, being outside of Chicago. So we added this farmhouse sink, and it's been a workhorse. I put my little dog Bear in here, and I give him a bath every once in a while. This shade was made from Wells Abbott is the fabric house that carries it, with this little Samuel & Sons trim, and I think it just fit perfect. It was one of the first drapery treatments I made when we moved in. I really like it. So over here, I'm an avid coffee drinker, so I have my Jaliska cups usually hanging right here every morning. This is my spot. The fridge was here when we moved in. We haven't replaced it yet because it still works any day. If it stops working, I'm definitely gonna get a new one. And these floors were all this yellow oak, very 90s, but the doors kind of had a problem. So we needed to sand them down and redo them. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I ever had the chance to sand a floor and paint it, now is my time. I need to move on this. So this area, we hang out here all the time. It's really a working kitchen. I'll be cooking, we'll be eating, and we have no formal dining room. So this is our very light-filled dining space. This bamboo table, I think it's Old Baker. I got it at Heritage Trail, a thrift store here in Chicago in the North Shore. And we had the chairs reupholstered. Those were from, I think they're from Wayfair, like 15 years ago. And today I went out in the rain, I clipped these branches from a tree in the backyard that needed some pruning, and I put them in this pretty vase that I had. And I have never done a light fixture here because I think that it would take away and make this space seem smaller. When my drapery woman made the shade in the kitchen window, I had her make these tiny little leftover guys for the doors. And these are actually, we needed privacy right away when we moved in. So these roll down shades are from IKEA. And I don't know if they're still available, but they're so functional. We use them all the time. And I've never even seen like a high-end shade that does this type of thing. But it's magnets and it clips back up. But my kids also scale the walls. Sometimes when we're eating in here or I'm not watching them, and they will go around the windows. And so if they get ketchup on them or anything, I'm not going to be mad because they're from IKEA and they do the trick. Funny story about these tiny little paintings. So I had sconces in this space that were just, you know, like the tiny ones, and I took them to the show house that I worked on a few weeks ago. So I needed something to fill the space, and I went to my very good friend Trent. He was having a estate sale. If you're ever in the North Shore this summer, he has them all the time, and he's a collector. So he collected these, and I thought, oh, there's just a set of 4, and I like the scale and the color with this kind of millennial gray. This is actually Beluga Mist, but I call it millennial gray because it's boring. And I like the juxtapose of how kind of dirty and earthy these are with the coldness of this millennial gray. So they worked out. This tiny space right here really acts as our mudroom from our garage. I mean, this is 2,200 square feet, family of 5. This gets loaded. Today, we have a very nice hat and some of my kids' mud boots that are actually always live here because we run out in the backyard. But this little bamboo piece came from Lakeside Antiques in New Buffalo. And it's one of my favorite pieces because it fits right in the spot. Those are my favorite. So that's it for the kitchen. Let's head into the powder room now. Right, so I'm excited to show you the powder room. I just put this beautiful wallpaper up from Sandberg. I love the botanicals. I love how cozy it feels. So we updated the white trim to this Oxford stone, high gloss. I think it turned out really beautiful. And although this paper is so pretty, I didn't know what to hang on top of the botanical. So we found this beautiful bracket for my friend Elizabeth Stamos. She's an interior designer here in Winnetka. And a vintage vase, and just threw some branches in it. But this room makes me so happy. My kids use it every day. They come here, splash water on literally everything here. They step on their little Serene and Lily stool. They come over to this vanity. So I had this skirt made to cover up this pedestal, which it was not a bad pedestal, just standard. And I thought, oh, the kids are going to ruin this. And let this be a lesson, everybody. Kids kind of surprise you when they don't. This has held up for 2 years, no stains. It's worked out really well. And I think if anything happened, I could wash it, but I like the look of it. I think it adds interest. It's kind of fun. Don't let the kids deter you from not doing the design you want. That's all I have to say. Just do it. I had this vintage bamboo mirror that I actually bought in Chicago. I don't know where. But one thing I do like to do in bathrooms a lot is add a toilet seat that's not white plastic. I think the brown toilet seats make it look English and kind of traditional and more handsome. I loved how this turned out. Now let me show you the family room, which is adjacent. So I'm so happy to show you the family room. We hang out in this space all the time. It's on the first level of our house off the kitchen. It never looks this clean, so you're in for a treat. The first thing we did in this space, I switched out the light fixture. This is from Visual Comfort. I love the quatrefoil brass. I think it's fun and unique. And I added this tiny pinstripe wallpaper, which it just adds a little bit of interest. I'm kind of a wallpaper freak, so this is the minimal wallpaper for me. But it just makes it look layered, like a closet or a liner. I love it. My kids love to have their toys out, and this was a nice compromise of space and function. This is my very favorite print, Bowood by Colfax and Fowler. And it served well here as like a little curtain to hide all their toys and the color. So when I'm watching TV without them, I shut it and I pretend like I don't see the mess. So that's nice. These lamps were vintage alabaster, and I just found the little shades on Amazon and put them together. I also store a lot of toys in these baskets. It's an easy way to clean up if you know company's coming. Swoop all your toys, dump them in the baskets, put a lid on it, and no one knows. My kids use this Pottery Barn kitchen all the time. Even my 9-year-old down to my 1-year-old, we play restaurant. So this has gotten a lot of use and held up really well. Highly recommend it. This is an abstract piece of art. Everything in here was getting so, I don't know, traditional. I think kind of a nice juxtapose from the traditional to the contemporary is kind of fun and unexpected. So we threw that guy in here. I put more Bowood everywhere. I love a room wrapped in one print if you use it on everything. I had these chairs already in this tiny pinstripe that kind of coordinates with the wallpaper, but if these ever get ruined, which they will because they're white in a kid's room, I'm definitely going to put them in bowood. And this little bamboo side table I love. I've had it forever. It's probably on its last leg. This little sofa, it was a CB2 sofa that I've had for 6 years. I think it was one of the first pieces I bought when we moved in this house. It was in the bedroom, and of course it was stained because it was white, and that's how we live. So I recently had it reupholstered in the bowood, which turned out lovely. And these antique mirrors I found at a lot of estate sales. I feel like I keep saying that because it's the best place to find unique things, in my opinion, unless you go to an antique dealer. But those kind of dress up the tiny corners. I really liked how those turned out. And again, we have a sister parish fabric on this little pinstripe. And this is my way to protect the chairs when I'm not in here to monitor the little ones. But I think it all turned out really well. When we were looking for a carpet for this room, it's an odd space because it's an off rectangle. So I've used these carpet tiles many times for clients, and they're perfect if you have kids, dogs, messy husbands, if you're messy, if your friends are messy, if you're having fun. Get the carpet tiles because as each one gets dirty, I literally pop it out and replace it. Recently, these were all so bad that I had it steam cleaned last week, and it turned out really nice. I mean, it's a cream carpet tile in a kid's room, and it's steamed up perfect. Love those floor tiles. That's what they are. And usually they're about 5 to 20 a square foot, but they work out. And this coffee table I bought specifically for the kids to use markers on and hang out on. And it's from Target, and I think it was $40, and it's one of the best purchases I've made for this space. This is my staircase up to my second floor. This gate gets a lot of use. I had my contractor build it, modeled after a David Adler gate that I saw here in town. I love the design. He said it's very sturdy. If you ever need something with an X, it worked out. But it keeps my 1-year-old from going up the stairs, which is nice. And then up here, I had a sisal runner made for the stairs, and it's actually held up well. It never can be cleaned, so I always say, take off your shoes if you're going up the stairs. But this sisal worked out. When we moved in, this was very 90s. It had a 90s finial here on the post, and my contractor put this wrap on to make it more craftsman style and blocked off, which I think makes it look a little more updated. And he also added all of this wood trim leading up the stair, the paneling. I think it finishes the space. And this was drywall, very 90s, like let's just put drywall on drywall. And so he added this casing, which I think it was a weird ledge to begin with, but we added some lanterns that turn on at night because there's no power, and a Roman shade for some interest on the wall. I think it worked out well. I feel like there's certain elements that I tell my clients all the time will make a huge difference in their homes. Lighting, paint, and the architectural elements are so key when you're thinking of buying a space or renovating a space. I think if you don't have the architectural elements, it's kind of hard to layer on decoration, like wallpaper and furniture, if you don't have some of those elements. And I think lighting can make or break a space immediately. So when you're thinking of buying fixtures or replacing things in a room, go for it. Even if it's just an updated, any kind of sconce or light fixture over a table, it could really elevate the space and update it current. But paint is huge. I feel like it's the lowest price point item you can spend in a room. Usually, it's $100 to $1,000, whether you're doing it yourself or hiring somebody, and it can change the space immediately. So here we are on the second floor landing. This space makes me so happy when I walk into it. It's got these very fun Greek key painting on the floor. It was initially carpet when we moved in, which got trashed immediately. So we ripped it up, put hardwood in, and Julie, my very good friend, painted this. It turned out really nice. She's an excellent mural artist as well. So this light is from Bradley. It's called the Lucille. It's the mama light to the Lucy downstairs that came from my Chicago apartment. And this wallpaper in here is from Carriage. I didn't know whether I should panel this space, but the paper makes me happy. It's adjacent to the staircase, so you know, I liked that the background white was as white as the staircase, so I think it worked out well. But it's a shorter ceiling in this space, so it called for a little fun. All right, so now moving into my daughter's room. This room, I offered her the big room when we first moved in, and she said, no, I'd like this room. She calls it the garden room. These structural beams were here, and I thought, why don't we add some sconces and make it more, you know, symmetric, and we'll add 2 beds. So we have one girl, but she has sleepovers a lot, and sometimes I lay in here and we have girl talk. She's 9, so she's very much into preppy product, jelly cats, oh my God, skibbity, those things. So we display her little products here, and she still likes pink. I don't know how long it's gonna last, but this room is painted in setting plaster by Farrell & Ball, and we color drenched it, and we did matte on the walls and high gloss on the trim. And these paintings I've had since I did my first Lake Forest show house. I did the first little girl's room, and these were from an artist in South Carolina, but I love the prints, and we had a set of them, so they worked out. The drapery treatments in this room were just ready-mades, and they're on a chain, and I don't know if I'd ever do it again, but it's called a hobble fold. It's not my favorite, so I always just keep them pulled up unless we need them at night. But I really like how this room turned out. It's happy and sweet, just like Zella. All right, so next we're gonna check out the boys' room. All right, so this is my son's room. I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old, so we combine them in the bigger spare bedroom. I love this space because it gets so much natural light, and it had this wainscoting when we moved in, and we painted it. This is light blue by Farrell & Ball. I think it adds color without adding too much color. This is just Beluga Mist by Benjamin Moore. This piece, it was a very expensive, beautiful photograph that I purchased for our Chicago condo, and I had no space for it in the formal living room, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's so serene. We'll put it in here. It looks like water, like Lake Michigan on the North Shore. It worked out. So the room obviously is blue and white themed, but then we added a lot of sailboats and kind of whimsy accents to make it just super fun. Okay, so this gallery wall is filled with Mary McGuire art, which I adore all of her pieces. She's a very talented artist in the New England area. And then these pieces are all vintage that I found collecting. But I wanted to fill this wall with something, so sailboats seemed fitting with the water theme we had. So this giraffe my grandfather got for my son Grant when he was born, and he kind of lives here. He wears any costume. He's been rode on, knocked over. He's a buddy. This dresser, I looked and looked and looked everywhere, and I needed something very specific under 34 inches, and this happened to be at an estate sale, and it came home with me. So we have that on this wall with a very rustic. Sometimes I like the really vintage, almost dirty pieces of art, or like objects on like something very like millennial gray, because I think it adds interest. This side of the wall, we just hung some vintage tennis rackets that I thought were super cute. And we hide so many toys in here again. These are raffia, and I loved the scalloped little liners that have been washed many times. This was such a pretty window, but I knew my kids would ruin long drapery panels. So I had my drapery workroom make this little Roman shade, and we use it every day up and down, and it's held up great. The fabric is Schumacher, and it's these tiny little tufts that I think add interest and texture. So my son will sleep here usually. This bed is CB2. I loved the cane detail. I think it just is so pretty. Like, I'm a sucker for anything cane. Kaylin cane, but not that kind of cane. The cane on this bed. And then this desk is raffia. It's from One Kings Lane. It's held up really well. My son wanted a desk, but we're getting tight on space. So we found this super cute little guy to stick in here. Just some vintage accents kind of warm up some of these new build feels. So in this room, I found this cute little star flush mount that I've always wanted to use, and I thought it was the perfect piece to go in this space. All right, now I'll take you into the kids' bathroom, which we recently redid. This is the children's bathroom. We recently redid this one last summer. It had a jet tub that had to go, so we just did another drop-in clean line tub. Again, I wanted to incorporate some English vibes. So the toilet seat is wood, which I love adding that detail. This vanity was a drop-in vanity from Worlds Away. Again, it has cane detail, which kind of mimics like what they have in the boys' bedroom, and I love cane. The tile might be from Floor & Decor. I'm not gonna lie. I think some of the green is from Floor & Decor, this little detail. But I wanted to add a little pattern and give it a little pinstripe. I love a brass detail. This brass pull, instead of having a white shower curtain rod, I think elevates it a little. It's from Signature Hardware. Turned out well. And again, we have some vintage art, just to add a little juxtaposition from all the gold and brass. I needed something warm and kind of earthy to break up the shiny. And I think it turned out super cute. The floor, I was a little hesitant to put marble in a kid's bath, but I wanted the color and the richness to have stone and coordinate with the vanity countertop. So this one is just a herringbone marble I use all the time in my projects. I think it's classic and timeless. And so I wanted each kid to have a space to hang their towel. So I'm a big fan of hooks. So they come in, they can hang up their towel nicely on a hook. No one has to fold it and put it over a bar. It works out, it's super functional. So the wall color is blue-gray by Farrow & Ball, the same in the living room. However, this is matte everywhere and with a high gloss trim to kind of add a little texture so you can see which is matte and which is high gloss. But I love this color so much I painted the living room this same color because I loved it. All right, so the piece de resistance, I'll take you into the primary bedroom next. All right, so this is my primary bedroom. We love the light in here. When we first moved in, it had old carpet, so we laid down this cream carpet, which has held up well. Stanley Steamers visits us a lot. And we made a little office space because it's almost like 2 rooms in one, and we didn't know how to utilize this space, but we spend a lot of time here. When my husband works from home, he'll work here, I'll work here. This space, I feel like, is flooded with light, and when we moved in, it had vinyl blinds, and it was so hideous. So we ripped out all the blinds, and I've always wanted to put custom window treatments in here, but it is a large area. So these are from IKEA. I can't remember what brand it is, but I've used them many times. They're cotton, and I hemmed them to the length that I needed because I needed them right away. And they provide enough shade. So we just, every night we pull these back, and it works out really well. There's so many windows. But I also feel like it's very airy and light with keeping the light white. So this is a king bed, and I think my husband had this. I wanted to get rid of this sofa so bad, but he loves it, and so it lives up here. It lives here, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I think it's originally from West Elm. And this coffee table, again, a little rattan, is always my friend. I think that's from CB2, but it's traveled with us many places. And then this dresser was vintage, and I'm always on the hunt for a new dresser. I'd love like a rattan dresser here, but this one's held up well, and it's so much storage. I can't complain. I kept everything kind of neutral. This lumbar pillow, I believe, is from Target, so I like high-lows. I think these Euroshams are from Surrey and Lily, and these are from Worlds Away. They're nice raffia, which have held up great. I feel like every night I'm sitting a drink on here, and you would think raffia would deteriorate, and it hasn't. It's been amazing. These lamps are from, where are these from? Just an online store, but then I added this little pleated shade, and I think it elevates the whole look from being kind of modern to a little bit more traditional. Some fun elements. So I know half the people are, like in the world, half of my clients are ceiling fan people and half the people are pretty light in the bedroom people. I'm a pretty light in the bedroom person. And this light came from an online store. Right when we bought the house, I took out all the lights and replaced everything, and I have no idea where it came from. And we rarely turn it on. But I love the lantern look. I love the scale of it. I think it's so pretty. Home to me means family and where your things are. And I think it's important to create a home that everyone's welcome in and you feel cozy right when you walk through the door. Thanks for stopping by, Homeworthy. I have kids to go pick up now. Bye.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Sophie Patterson, interior designer. Welcome to my home in Surrey, England. Come on in.
Watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Sophie Patterson. I'm an interior designer, and today we are here in my home in Surrey in England. We found this house back in 2012 and it was a complete new build. At the point that I found it, it was just the shell of a building. And what really drew me to it was the layout of the space. It's very open plan, but you can shut each room, so it really gives you that flexibility for living. Also, we were moving from South Kensington in London. We lived in a very small views house. So when I saw this property, it was further out of London than I planned on moving to. But with all the natural light coming in from the garden, the big garden at the back, the scale of it, I just fell in love with it. For me, this was a home that I felt we would have a family in. It was going to be our forever home. And my personal style is very much a blend of classic and contemporary. This property is a neo-Georgian house, so it's taken inspiration from the Georgian era. And I really wanted to combine that more traditional architecture with some contemporary furnishings. Right now we are in our entrance hall, and the feel that I really wanted to create in here was to make it feel as bright and spacious as possible. I also really wanted to layer in some character and architectural detail. When we found the house, it was just the bare bones of a new build, and I really felt like it was lacking character. So one of the things I knew I wanted to do early on was add some paneling onto the walls. And one of my tricks that I've used to do this is where we didn't want to rip all the cornice and the skirting off, we added some plant-on moulding, which is something you've probably seen a lot, but then we also added this extra MDF detail that just gives it some depth. And I felt instantly the whole house felt like it had a bit more character. It had that kind of hybrid of classical, traditional design that I love, which we were then able to layer up with some contemporary furniture. This particular piece is probably one of my favorites, and I love it because it's the first thing you see as you walk in, and it's an antique that I've bought online. You'll see as we walk around the home, we have a lot of antiques here, and they're all my favorite pieces of furniture. What I love about this piece is it's got this flamed oak, and flamed oak has lots of sort of pattern and variety in the grain, and it looks so beautiful. And I think a lot of people worry when they're sourcing antiques. I know a lot of my clients can feel quite intimidated by it. How do you pick a good antique? How do you know if it will work? And I think don't worry about the provenance of the antique. For me, it's all about the materials themselves. So when I'm looking, whether it's online or in person, I always look at the joints, I look at the materials themselves, I look at the wood, the marble, and do you like the piece? You're not buying it necessarily as an investment. When I buy antiques, I'm sometimes buying them from eBay or markets. They're not huge investments, but it's just got to be a piece that I love. So I think so many people are scared to even try and buy antiques, but I really recommend everyone should embrace it because it adds so much interest into your room. Above that, I've layered it with a mirror. And this is from one of my favourite suppliers in the UK. If you ever get the chance to go to Pimlico Road, it's just this plethora of amazing interior design shops. Everyone loves it there. And this particular supplier is called Jam. Jam have an amazing collection, almost museum worthy, of antiques and reproduction pieces. So even if you're not shopping, go in there for a little tour. They're very friendly. So I got this mirror and these wall lights that flank it, the lanterns, are both from Jam. Flanking either side, I've got a pair of antique chairs, and I had these reupholstered, and where the chest of drawers doesn't really marry in with any of the other colours in the room in terms of the timber, I made sure that they still sort of felt cohesive by picking a fabric on the chairs that ties in with this black and white and grey marble on top. My husband and I really love to have pieces that have memories attached to them, and this painting is one of my favourite pieces of art that we own. It was a gift from my in-laws, and it's by a Scottish artist called Alison Dunlop. What I love about it is it's a really contemporary take on one of those classical oil paintings. It's got so much intricate detail, but it still feels very modern at the same time. This was previously hanging in their townhouse in Edinburgh, so I have lots of happy memories of going to their home in Scotland, seeing it there, and now it hangs in our entrance hall. I always like to take inspiration from the artwork into the room itself, whether that's the fabrics or the colour scheme in general. So here I've picked out the feather motif that you've got in the painting and brought that down onto these cushions that we had made for the sofa. This sofa is one of my dog's favourite pieces actually. Pip, my Dachshund, is obsessed with cashmere, and surprisingly the sofa's managed to withstand a lot of slobbering and jumping up and down by him, so it's worked out to be quite practical, but I also love how it's an unexpected fabric to see in your entrance hall. The main focal point as you walk into our entrance is this staircase, and it has some real wow factor. When we bought the property, the staircase that the builder had designed was completely different. He had it blocked off at the back, and it was much more angular, and I knew straight away that I wanted to change that. I wanted it to feel as soft and curved as possible and really open, so we removed all the storage that they'd designed, kept it open, and we designed this balustrade that again has that mix of classical and contemporary. And then because we have a skylight in the roof above, again we wanted to bring as much of that light down into this space as possible, so we added an aigle-mise mirror. This one's by one of my favourite suppliers called Stuart Fox. And what's great about this aigle-mise mirror is, unlike a clear mirror where you see all your fingerprints, because we've got kids and marks, this kind of disguises any of those fingerprints that you might have on there, so it's really practical, and it has a sort of more antique feel to it. Symmetry is really important to me in any room that I design, but particularly in an entrance hall where you've got the central staircase. I knew I wanted to have a pair of tables on either side, and I tried really hard to find a matching pair of antique tables that would work, but sadly it was just not possible. So we had these fabricated. But again, because I wanted to mix the antiques in here as much as possible, I layered them up with these antique urns that I found in Petworth. Petworth is this gorgeous village in West Sussex, and it's renowned for amazing antiques, and it's such an amazing day out, even if you're not shopping, just to go there to get inspiration. Anyway, we stumbled upon these urns in an antique shop that was closing down, and straight away I knew they'd be perfect for this space. They just add, again, some different patina, different materials. We've put some faux orchids in there, but normally if we're having an event or a party, we take these out, they're just in a bucket, and then we'll get loads of flowers depending on the time of the year. At Christmas we get mini Christmas trees with lights, so it's a really fun feature to dress and make a focal point in here. And then on the table itself we've just layered it with loads of photo frames. I can't get enough of photo frames because I just love looking at happy memories. So as you walk in through the main door, one of the things that I loved about this property was it has a really grand entrance hall. It has a central staircase that branches off into two separate staircases that take you upstairs. And then the layout on the ground floor is we have a cozy TV room on the left. Then next to that you walk through into the open plan kitchen. That's probably my favourite room and it's where we spend most of our time. We have open plan dining, the kitchen with a huge central island, and then a sitting room where we sit and watch movies as a family. Off the side of that sitting room we have a utility room and all the back of house. And then next to the kitchen on the other side we have a semi-open plan dining room which has double doors from the kitchen and also into the sitting room. Upstairs we have 4 bedrooms. When we bought it, it was a 5-bedroom house, but I turned one of the bedrooms into a separate dressing room for me. I feel like that's the secret to a happy marriage, separate bathrooms and separate dressing rooms. So now we're gonna head into our sitting room, which is where we take all our guests when we're entertaining. This is our formal sitting room, and this is really the place where if we're having a dinner party, all of our friends and guests will gather in here for drinks. We use this space a lot with family events like Christmas, but even at the weekend, my husband and I love to sit in here if we're having a drink. We'll sit in here, put the fire on and have just chats after the kids have gone to bed. So it's a really much used space. I think a lot of people are scared or don't tend to use their formal spaces as much, but this is one of my favourite rooms in the house because it's got windows on both sides and it just has a really calming feel. Things that we've done in here, so the very first thing I do when I'm designing any space, whether it's for myself or clients, is I always start with a floor plan. Now, this is a square room, but it's not a very easy shaped room to design because you have the double doors coming off the entrance hall, and then you also have double doors from the dining room, and the double doors off the entrance hall are on a diagonal, so it kind of puts off all that symmetry that I would like to have in here. So I kind of had to play around with the furniture layouts to counteract that. But we knew that we wanted as much seating as possible because we love to have quite big dinner parties. So that really kind of started the whole space planning. And then when it came to the colour scheme itself, my starting point was this beautiful silk wallpaper, which we've had here ever since we moved in. It was one of our biggest investments. When we first bought this property, we'd spent all of our money on the house itself, so we decorated quite slowly. But this was one of the big ticket items that I knew that I wanted straight away, and it's one of those things that it's just timeless. I know we're always going to like it. We've evolved our house quite a lot in the 13 years we've been here, but this is something that will never go until I go. So I'm really pleased with it. And I think what's nice about silk or any kind of fabric wall covering is it gives you that really cocooning, soft feel that I really wanted in here. There's quite a lot of hard finishes, but it gives you that kind of feeling of warmth and coziness, and it kind of changes with the light throughout the day, so it can feel quite sort of cool in the morning, and then in the evening under candlelight, has a really cozy glow. So for the curtains or drapes, as you like to call them in the US, I really wanted to keep them off the windows as much as possible. That's something that I always do because I didn't want to block the light. This is north facing, so we really wanted to bring in as much light as possible, and we wanted to keep it quite understated. So rather than going for big pelmets, we've done this curtain pocket where the corner sits forward of the wall itself, and it allows you to run a track all the way along the ceiling, and the curtains just go up into that recess. For the fabrics in here in general, I kind of built it around the colour palette of the silk wallpaper, so there's lots of cool greys and whites and taupes. I love neutral interiors on the whole. I find them very calming and timeless, but then it's really important to me that it doesn't feel too flat, so then we've really embraced a lot of texture. So you can see on things like this table lamp, for example, it's got this really emphasized texture, and it's quite a rustic table lamp. And I think I really like that juxtaposition of something that's really refined, whether it's silk velvets or silk on the walls, and then something like a plaster lamp on an antique table. It's unexpected, and for me it feels more interesting. We've evolved this room quite a lot since we've lived here. Our tastes have changed as a couple, our lifestyles changed. We've now got children. When we first moved here we didn't, And as a result, we're not scared to keep changing the house up. I also find it really fun, and I don't know any interior designer that doesn't want to change their home constantly. So one of the big changes we did about 4 years ago was, as well as changing some of the pieces of furniture, we changed the rug to a sisal. And again, it goes with that ethos of different textures, different styles, combining. I wanted something that was going to sort of play down the luxury of this room and make it feel a bit more everyday, so it didn't feel like it was too formal a space to use for less formal gatherings. I am not a design snob. I really don't care where things come from. So if you look at this blue and white chinoiserie vase collection, this was a collection I built over a few days where I was ill in bed several years ago with the flu, and I just went crazy on eBay. I literally bought every blue and white chinoiserie vase I could find, and I love them. And to me, they really don't, it doesn't matter like, you know, where they're from or what they're worth. I just wanted to have a full fireplace of blue and white vases, and they work so well when we have an event or when we're having a gathering. I fill them all with flowers, and you only need to spend a limited amount of money on flowers and you can fill them all, and it creates this amazing grand statement as you walk in. I've collected more blue and white chinoiserie. The thing is, once I start collecting something, I'm quite bad at stopping. Luckily, I have a double garage here as well, which is kind of like my storage unit for all the items that I can't fit in the house. But that's kind of mixed onto the table itself as well. So I love having the blue and white vase, and then even things like my friends know that I love blue and white so much. So one of my good friends, who's also a designer, bought me this calligraphy brush, which I love. Last weekend was glorious sunshine here. We had all the doors at the back of the house. Every single room has French doors. We opened them all up. We ended up spending most of the weekend in the garden, so it really is nice to have that indoor-outdoor vibe. Whenever we're sitting down, I mentioned earlier, so whenever we're sitting down, I always like to make sure that everyone has a table within reaching distance for their drink. This is one of my top tips, anyone watching this. If you want your guests to feel relaxed, make sure that they can put their drink down somewhere. This one actually I designed myself, and it's from a company called Loom. And I love how it kind of tucks into the sofa, so if you're lying down, you don't have to reach for your drink, it's just right there. And my kids all fight over these tables because we've got one in this room and one in our other family room. And they love on a Friday night to have their dinner, not at the dining table, but on these tables. And it's kind of like those, I don't know if anyone in the US or anyone watching this channel used to do it, but my sisters and I back in the 90s would have those tray tables that we'd sit on the sofa and watch our TV shows and eat our dinner, and it's kind of like a more chic version of that. I really love this table in this corner because there's a lot of plug sockets behind it, and one of my pet hates in interior design is seeing cables and seeing plug sockets. So I knew I wanted to have a solid table, and I really love skirted tables because they have that classical side to them. And then we've made it a little bit more understated by using a really rustic linen. This is a Belgium linen that I found at the Chelsea Harbour. And then we added this trim along the bottom, which is from Samuel & Sons. And underneath is actually just a garden table that I found online. Super cheap table, but it just happened to be the right proportions that I wanted for this corner. And then I've just dressed it with this beautiful table lamp from Porta Romana, which is one of my favourite manufacturers for chandeliers and table lamps. Over on the other side of the room is this cabinet that again was a later addition. Previously we had a console here, but I really wanted to bring something with glazing here, so I felt like it balanced all the windows and the doors on the other side, and I love all the reflections that you get through the glass. This again was a piece that I found on eBay, and it was previously pine, so I had one of my decorators paint it. We went for a light colour on the outside, we changed the handles. These ones are from Armac Martin, just added a little tassel. And then on the inside, we've painted it this really dark grey so that all your objects really pop out against that darker colour. One of our main things that we love to do at home is entertain. We are always the friends that have the dinner parties. For my family and my husband's family, we are the place where everyone comes for holidays. We host Christmas and any kind of Father's Day or gatherings. We love to entertain, and I think that was a big influence on how we designed the space. We love the fact that we have this great formal space in the sitting room. There's no TV in here. It's all about socializing. Myself, that I sat when I did this room, and the layout was just have as much seating as possible. So I've got seating on 4 sides of the room, and it makes for great cocktail parties. Everyone has really great sort of social gatherings in here, and we can fit lots of people in. So now I'm going to take you through into our formal dining room. this is one of the most recently updated rooms that we have here in the house. For quite a few years, this was my children's playroom, which filled me with absolute dread because it was just this cascade of toys that would continually flow back into the formal sitting room. So it's really nice to have it back into a dining room. We can have all the doors open again. The starting point for the design in here was the wallpaper. This is the olive grove wallpaper by Fremantle, and it forms part of our collection that we designed together. And the reason why I wanted to use this wallpaper here is because this room sort of projects forward into the garden, and so you've got views on three sides looking at greenery. We actually used to have lots of olive trees in the garden, but sadly those died. And I love how it's got that indoor-outdoor feel. It's not a space that we just use at night time. We also use it during the day for lunches, so I didn't want it to feel too dark and oppressive. I've taken the colour scheme and the kind of like organic theme from the wallpaper onto the chandelier with this oak leaf chandelier that we've got in the middle. And again, I like how it's quite understated. It doesn't feel too fancy. It's just got this really sort of simple, rusty metal finish. And then one of the very first pieces of furniture that I bought for this room was, whilst it was still a playroom and I was just dreaming of having a dining room again, I found this cabinet. I think it's called a Dutch bomb cabinet, or maybe a linen press. I found it from an antiques dealer called Lawford's, who's a really well-known antiques dealer in the UK, and I absolutely fell in love with its shape. I love how it's got this really sort of soft scalloped shape at the top with this crescent, and then these really chunky drawers at the bottom. So this has actually been sat in my garage for about 3-4 years. So again, at Christmas time, we had this really ambitious plan of redecorating this room in time to be able to host Christmas in here. And it was so nice to finally get it out of the garage and back into the house. This table I designed custom. We actually had our dining table that we still have in the kitchen temporarily in here. And it was quite good to kind of try out different shapes, because sometimes if you live with a space, you can kind of work out what you really need. And I quickly realized that I didn't want to have straight lines in this room, where the antique cabinet has lots of soft curves and there's all the organic shapes in the wallpaper. Anything with straight lines just really clashed with that. So I designed this shape because I love to have a rectangular table in terms of dressing, but then what I've done is made the sides very slightly convex, and that has the benefit that when you're sitting there in a row, you're not all perfectly straight, so you can still converse with the person on the other side of your neighbour. And it also works really well with the shape of the room we've got. And then I've rounded all the corners. I designed a project in the Gulf about 2-3 years ago under the principles of feng shui. And ever since then, I've kind of avoided sharp corners because they refer to it as poison arrows, and it's meant to bring you bad fortune. So now it's kind of stuck in the back of my head, and every time I'm designing some custom furniture, I'm like, let's round the corner. But it also feels much more soft and organic, and where you have some sort of tight pinch points in this room, it works really well to soften those corners. For the chairs themselves, I've gone for a combination of different styles. So these chairs were originally in our kitchen, and you'll see shortly that we now have a table with no chairs. And I wasn't sure if they'd work well in this room, but I really like them in here. I like the fact that we have 2 different styles because it feels a bit more unexpected. These ones are super comfortable, and they've got a beautiful herringbone wool fabric from De La Cogne. But what I like about these chairs is that we had them custom made, and they are all leather, so they're super easy to clean. We have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son, and if they weren't wiped clean, then I'd have to get them reupholstered every 6 months. So I like to have that balance of practical and luxurious. I don't want things just to look good and everyone's kind of stressed they can't relax. Behind me, this is one of my favorite vases that we own. It's by an artist in Paris called Gilles Caffier, and I actually own 3 of his pieces that I've got around the home. I've got just one at the moment because I've got a second plinth on order. And this again is from a collection that we designed for Loom. And I really like how it's got a really simple base, and then we've got the Calicata Viola marble, which I purposely picked to kind of bring out the colour of the olives that we've got on the wallpaper. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, we're going to have another one on this side too. These wall lights or sconces are from Porto Romano, and we've had these as long as we've had the house. They've lived through a lot of revolutions of this room. So when we first moved in, we had a different dining room, which I can share a photo of what that used to look like. But I was not sure if they were going to work with this scheme, but actually I was really happy that the lampshade ties in perfectly with the green of the olives, so we decided to keep them. I don't like to throw things out just for the sake of it. We always try and reuse things, or if I am getting rid of something, I try and give it to a friend or family or seller. These are quite an old edition. I think these are the things that we've had longest in this whole room. Through these double doors, we have the kitchen. Now this is a room that's in real transition, and it's definitely something that we want to change. We're actually going to be doing a big renovation later this year, and this is one of the main rooms that's going to change. Everything that you've seen so far is staying, but where we've grown from a couple to a family of 4, I now have 2 children that eat me out of my fridge every couple of days, so we just need more storage. But also, truthfully, my taste has changed. So when I designed this kitchen 12, 13 years ago, I loved this dark oak, whereas now I'm craving a much sort of lighter colour palette throughout here. But I'll tell you some of the things that do still work, that I do still like about this kitchen. So it's a really sociable space, and when we have family over, particularly if we're entertaining on a sort of more casual level, everyone always wants to sit at the island, and I always end up cooking here and talking to them whilst they're sitting. And what I particularly like is that we've got this mirror splashback, so that when you're sat at the island, you can see the garden reflected in the splashback, and it's a really nice way to enjoy that view rather than just having to look out the window. We've changed a few things in this kitchen over the years. So this is a specialist liquid metal finish. This is by a company called Anchor. And when I was pregnant with my son, well, actually every time I've been pregnant, so with my daughter and my son, I get this massive urge to do nesting, and that's when the big renovations happen in our house. Well, I'm done having kids now, and I think that's part of the reason why I keep delaying this renovation. I've had it planned for 2 years, but I just don't have that impetus to do it. But when I was pregnant with my son, this changed. We changed the lighting throughout the whole house. We changed some of the bedrooms. And what I like about this particular finish is that it brings in a textural contrast. Before, these were all timber and it felt quite flat, whereas now you've got something that's much more interesting and layered. If we head down into the sitting room area, this is where we tend to sit in the summer months with all the French doors open. It's like a great space where you can be outside with a fire pit that's just through the doors. And the kids tend to come in here and watch TV after they've kind of grown bored of playing in the garden. I really love sitting here because it's one of those areas where you don't have to worry about the fabrics. This sofa we've had as long as we've had the house, so 13 years. And I purposely chose a really dark colour because we've always had dogs. We used to have a black Cocker Spaniel who would jump up on the sofa, having run around in all the mud in the garden, and now we have a Dachshund that does the same. So it's just a really practical fabric. This table is a new addition. I really love how it picks out that aubergine tone into the Calacatta viola marble. And then this finish on the chimney brass, this is a specialist plaster finish, and I really love introducing lots of different textures into our home where we don't really have a huge amount of colour in every room. I think texture plays such an important part in making sure that it doesn't feel too flat and boring. And then on either side we have some shelves, and you know, even the shelves in our home are just layered with loads of photo frames. It just makes me feel really happy every time I look at these pictures. They have such happy memories attached to them, so that's something that we love to have in our home. Where this is such a large kitchen, I really didn't want it to feel utilitarian. I didn't want to have everything built in, so I've mixed in quite a lot of freestanding furniture in here, including this antique bureau. I think this is probably the first antique that I ever bought, certainly for this house. And inside it we keep all of our letters, but since we've had kids it tends to get raided with them, and it's now full of sunglasses as well. And above it I've dressed it with this beautiful piece of art by an artist that sadly since died, called Fenella Elms, and she was one of my really favourite artists. She does these beautiful pieces with small porcelain discs, and each one's hand applied, and it has this kind of cascading effect. It almost looks to me like an ocean that's in a storm, and we've had it lit specifically so it really like highlights all that texture. Now, where this is a kitchen, you wouldn't expect to have that much art, but I really like to have as much art in here as possible, and I think it's important to mix the different styles of art as well. So In the sitting area, we've got some oil paintings. This was the first one that I bought for the kitchen, and I love all the soft pastel colours in it. But then once it was hung, it felt really unbalanced to me that we didn't have a piece of art on this wall. So one of my things that I often do is buy antique picture frames on eBay or online. And I found the picture frame first, and then I commissioned the same artist to make a smaller oil painting that kind of brought those colours across onto this wall. These horse sculptures are something that gives me a lot of pleasure. I used to ride a lot when I was younger, and I had an ex-racing thoroughbred. I just find horses such an elegant animal. These particular ones are by an artist called Alexander Surrey, and I love how they've got the elongated legs. The only thing is, my kids love to sit and eat at the island, and then they want to watch TV. So these poor delicate horses have to get moved multiple times a day, which gives me a bit of headache and stress. But they look so beautiful when they're here that I can't bear to move them. For the bar stools, I always like to prioritize comfort and size rather than trying to squeeze 5 here. I'd rather go for 4 really good size ones. And these are so comfortable because they've got arms. Personally, I can't bear those bar stools where you sit there and there's nothing to support your back. This is a place where we'll sit for many hours with a glass of wine and chat to whoever's cooking, and they're a really popular place for everyone to come and sit in. Just off to the side of the sitting room, the kitchen, we have the utility room, which is the smallest but hardest working room in our house. Now, obviously we use this for laundry, but I also use this for storing all of our candles, for flower arranging. I spend a lot of time in this room. Some of my favorite features include this cupboard here, which I probably should have tidied before I showed you. But this is what we call our candle pantry, because my husband and I love scented candles. So we store all of those here, and it's something that we use a lot and gives me a lot of pleasure. Storage to me is really key. And then on the other side, we have lots of cleaning products. In this corner, because I love flower arranging, I had this curved cabinet made, and it's where we store all of our vases, which is just so handy when I'm arranging flowers. This cabinet was originally designed for where I was going to do all my flower arranging. You can see I've got a pot filler tap, but it's ended up being a cupboard where we store all of our Amazon deliveries, all of our parcels and packages. And actually it's shown me what a useful addition that is to any home. So now when I'm designing clients' homes, I always include a parcel cupboard, because everyone gets loads of packages and you need somewhere to store them all in. So this is where we currently store all of these, and then we've got lots of drawers for, tools that I use for flower arranging, even things like, shoe polishes. This space works incredibly hard, and then we have our post stored up there. I love a big butler sink, and this one's great because we can fit our dachshund in here, we give him his baths in here. This is also where I do all the flower arranging. And where we spend so much time in this room, I actually wanted to fill it with art as well. So we have an oil painting on the shelf. Again, it's just like leaning against the shelf, which is something I love to do. And my husband thought I was crazy when I was out at this art market with him. I was like, I'm gonna buy this for our utility room. But actually he's had to eat his words, because now he always says to me, I really like the fact that when we're in here, we get to appreciate these pieces of art because it's so unexpected. And then on the other side, I have another painting, and this one I bought in Boston. It's by a Finnish artist. Do you know what? I'm not even gonna try and say his name. I'm gonna show you on camera. But I found this in an art gallery in Boston, and it's a dragonfly. But I really love his painting style, and I try and buy pieces of art or collect things whenever I'm traveling, whether it's for work or pleasure, so you've got those memories when you come home. So back off the main entrance hall, we have our main powder room, which we have gone very luxurious with. I think it's something people love to do in general. I redesigned this one about 6 years ago when that big renovation when I was pregnant with my son. One of the things I really like to do in bathrooms in general is block the view of the toilet. So the toilet stayed in its original position, but I built this half-height wall, just a little nib, so that it kind of disguises the view of the toilet and separates the vanity area from that toilet area. The main feature in here is the wall covering. This one is called Branches in the Breeze, and I designed it with Fermentals so that it looks like it's spring branches, and you can see like the blossoms kind of cascading off the branches. It gives me a really sort of calming feel in here. And when we first designed this, I'll show you my bedroom, what we ended up putting in there, but I envisaged putting this one in my bedroom, but my husband loved one of the other wallpapers from the collection, so we put this in the powder room as a compromise, and I really love how it turned out. I recently layered this painting on top of the wallpaper, and I know a lot of people don't like to put art on top of hand-painted wallpaper, but I really like to layer it. But it's something that I really take my time in doing. We'd had this room like this for 6 years until I found the right piece of art. I'd actually commissioned this for our dining room, but then when I put it on top of that wallpaper, it felt too big. But it was a happy accident that it works so well in the guest powder room. There's an amazing antiques fair in Battersea Park in London every few months, and this was a purchase that I made there. It's this tiny little mirror, and it's so old that it's almost like not a mirror anymore, but I love how it's got this mercury glass and adds so much patina. And again, it's just the perfect size that it fitted in amongst the branches without covering up too much of that beautiful wallpaper. The last room on the ground floor that I'm going to share with you is my husband's study, and this has got a very masculine feel. It's a space just for him, so I really wanted to embrace that sort of darker colour palette. We started with the wallpaper. I do tend to start with the wallpaper a lot, I'm realising. This one is a Fornasetti design from Cole & Son, and it's got this really beautiful cloud pattern on it, and I love how it's got this really dramatic feel, but it also still feels contemporary. But it's a really nice dark backdrop to layer up with all those warm mahogany and walnut antiques that we've got in here. This antique Louis Vuitton chest was a present that I bought for his birthday about 10 years ago. But really it was a present for myself because I wanted one of these in our home. So I kind of killed two birds with one stone, but luckily he loved it too. I found it from an antiques dealer, and I knew that I wanted to use it as a sideboard. So a little trick that I did was have a joinery firm, or I think you call it carpentry in the US, manufacture this base just to lift it up slightly so that it was more usable as a sideboard. And then I've layered it up with this David Lindley lamp, beautiful Macassar ebony, and again, lots of photo frames and knickknacks. The painting above is an oil painting I found on eBay. Again, a lot of eBay purchases, and it's something that looks, it's beautifully painted, the quality of it's amazing. It's always a bit of a gamble when you buy art online or antiques online, but I think I kind of like that thrill, knowing if it's going to be good. What I find with this painting, and it'll be interesting to see if you can see this on video, is his eyes follow you wherever you are in the room. So if I stand near the sofa, it looks like he's looking at me, but if I'm standing behind the desk, it still looks like he's looking straight at you, so it's kind of freaky, but I do still like it. Pretty much all of the furniture in my husband's study is antique, and that was very intentional because he grew up in a beautiful townhouse in Edinburgh, and his parents have great taste, lots of antiques, and so it's something that felt very natural to him and something that he was really drawn to. And I think that was part of the journey sort of 13 years ago of what really helped me embrace antiques. These were also some early purchases. We found this bookshelf again in Petworth, and it was part originally of a huge built-in library in a stately home, but this was one section that they'd removed. And I really love how where it's got the antique glass. You can see it's sort of convex and it's not perfectly straight. And again, it creates those really beautiful reflections of the room. Especially at Christmas time, we have a Christmas tree opposite and you can see all the lights twinkling in the glass, so I love that. This vase next to it is another one by Giles Caffier. And my husband doesn't know it yet, but I'm actually going to steal this for our dining room because I want to go with the other vase as a matching pair. So I'll have to order something else to sit on this plinth. But I really love the texture of his work and the form. I feel like it's just very tactile and works in almost any interior. This piece is one of the biggest pieces of art Fenella Realms ever made, and I think it's such a special piece for that because obviously now she's no longer with us, you can't get them anymore. My husband absolutely loves it, and I love it's the first thing you see as you walk into the study. And also if he's ever doing Zoom calls, it's his Zoom background and people always ask him about it. So I think it's a really beautiful piece and it works so well with the movement in the piece of art itself next to the clouds, which have like this stormy sky. I feel like that's got a really nice relationship. On either side, I've flanked it with an antique sideboard. This one's an old games table which folds up. And I really wanted to find a matching pair, but I couldn't quite find the perfect pair. So I actually like how these two correlate. They're both rosewood, but they're slightly different proportions and style, but they still give you that sense of balance. So as well as being a space that my husband works from, he also likes to socialise in here. So I designed a small little sitting area for him, And I think his favorite chairs are these chairs because they swivel. So if he's having a meeting, people can kind of face him at the desk. But if he's wanting to watch TV whilst he's pretending to work, he can watch a football match and sit on these chairs. They are a silk velvet and they're a fabric that I particularly like. I think if ever I have a client that's very particular about fabrics marking, it's not something I'd recommend. But personally, I like how over time they've got a few marks on them and I feel like it just adds to the patina and makes it even more beautiful. We've combined that with an antique chair. This was something that I bought at auction, and I've got this little Scottish flag in honor of his heritage of being Scottish that sits there. This was a gift from a client of mine about 12 years ago who's also Scottish. And then finally on this side of the room, we have a leather Chesterfield couch, which is so comfortable. I love sitting in here. Sometimes if I'm working from home, I'll come and lie in here and answer emails on my mobile. And we've laid that with some Prince Charles check tartan and this beautiful buckle cushion. This is one of my favorite suppliers of fabric, De La Cogne. They also do some ready-made cushions too. Where this area was quite tight and I didn't have room for a side table on both sides of the sofa, I opted to go for a floor lamp. And these pieces were something that my in-laws gave us when they sold their house in Edinburgh. They were downsizing to another property, and so we were very lucky to inherit a few pieces of furniture from them. So they work perfectly in the space, but I also love the fact that there's something that's been in the family. And then in the corner, I've added another skirted table, similar to the one that we did in the living room. For the window treatments, again, I really wanted to go for something as masculine as possible. Here, we didn't really have the space on the wall to have art as well as curtain stacks, so I've gone for Roman blinds, and I've gone for a tartan in the middle to kind of go with that heritage Scottish feel. And then I've done a border of tan leather down the side, and it again just adds to that sort of Ralph Lauren feel in here and feels very masculine. My career into interior design was quite a convoluted route. Although I started my passion for interior design at a very young age, for as long as I can remember, I was obsessed with making spaces beautiful. Even as a 5-year-old girl, I was always rearranging my room, tidying up my room, my sister's rooms, my friends' rooms. I just felt at peace when I was doing something that made a space beautiful. That said, I then went down a much more academic route. I studied international management and Spanish. It really wasn't my passion, so after university, I did a complete U-turn and went back to interior design. And I had a very lucky opportunity that I got a project offered to me by a developer that I knew through some friends of friends in London. He'd seen our home that we had in London at the time, loved how I decorated it, and asked me firstly who I had hired to do it, and when I told him I did it myself, he offered me to do it for him. So that was really my first taste of interior design for clients other than just doing my own home. And I did that project for free. I was too nervous to take a fee for him in case I messed it up. He was really happy with what I did. We did several more projects again afterwards. And then very early on, I realized how important marketing was. So this was kind of 2008. There wasn't any social media at the time, but I did all my own press releases. And then when Facebook came out, I really embraced Facebook. Then I followed that with the wave of Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I've built my business thanks to social media and also just word of mouth. I think having those relationships with clients has been a really key part of my growth and building a company. And I think for us, it gives us a lot of reassurance. You know, when someone recommends a client or you have a mutual friend, you feel like you're going to have that connection. And I think for the client as well, it gives them a real sense of reassurance. If someone's worked with you and still has good things to say about you after you've finished a project together, that's a good sign. So now we've finished with the ground floor, we're going to head upstairs to have a look at the bedrooms. So now we're going to head into the primary bedroom. We converted one of the spare bedrooms and incorporated it into the main primary bedroom. So the first thing you're going to walk into is this kind of entrance lobby that we have. And I really love to have an entrance lobby before you get to the primary bedroom, so it just has a sense of separation, privacy, but we'll head in now. The rest of our home is very neutral, but when it came to our bedroom, we both fell in love with this deep burgundy wallpaper. My husband particularly loved it and really gave me the courage to go for it, because I do tend to err towards neutrals, but we don't really tend to spend that much time in our bedroom during the day, so it's really a space for relaxing, winding down at night, and it feels so cozy and soothing to have this colour on the walls, especially when you've got sort of table lamps. We don't tend to have any of the overhead lights on at night time, got lots of candles, and we love sitting in here watching TV and winding down from the day. I've mixed the burgundy with quite a lot of ivory because I didn't want it to feel too dark, so there's a real sort of contrast in colour palette. You've got the dark burgundy on the walls, but then we've picked up the ivory in this wallpaper that's from Fremantle onto the headboard, onto the drapes, even onto the furniture. So we've got very light coloured nightstands. We have this piece over here with mother of pearl, and I love how this picks out the light, but it also brings that colour so it's balanced around the room, and there's a nice mix of dark and light. Above the chest of drawers, I've gone for an antiqued mirror, and again, I love how it has the same effect as in our kitchen, where you get to look out into the garden and get that beautiful reflection, all that natural light bouncing back in here. A lot of people have mixed feelings about TVs in bedrooms. Personally, I'm a big fan. I don't know if it's because I'm in my 40s and I've got young children and I'm just exhausted, but I love nothing better than putting my kids to bed and crawling in here and watching a TV show before I go to sleep. So we've gone for the biggest possible TV we can fit in here. We've integrated it into some custom joinery. This is a beautiful silk wall covering. I think this one's by Philip Jeffries. And then we've got flanking that some decorative shelves, which we've dressed with some objects, and you can see it's got really small spotlights on each shelf, so it highlights them beautifully. One of my favourite lighting features to do if you have slightly lower ceilings, as we do here, is to run an LED strip above any joinery, and that floods the ceiling with light and it gives the illusion that the ceiling is much higher. So that's a little tip for you. Off of the bedroom, this used to be a sitting room. In fact, this used to be open plan with a bedroom, but it felt too big. So one of the changes that we've made over the years is to block this off and bring a door here. But through here, we have our gym. Now, it's quite unconventional to have a gym off your bedroom, but actually it was a genius move because it means we can roll out of bed at 5, 6 a.m. and before we're even thinking about what we're doing, we can squeeze in a workout without waking up our children. What I love about this space is its light colour palette. It's a real contrast next to the bedroom. The bedroom's all about relaxing and sleeping, but you step in here and you feel quite invigorated. I did a whole mirror wall to make it feel as large as possible, and it's not designed like your typical gym. So obviously normally you'd have rubber matting. I really don't like the feel or the look of dark black rubber matting, so I've gone for a timber floor, and then we did an oversized wool rug where it's just used by my husband and I. We didn't need to worry about, you know, other people sweating on it, so this is very much designed just for us. And then I did these custom weight racks, which are a mix of timber, and then it has this wool fabric here, which again seems like a really unusual choice. I did test out some leathers, but where the weights are so heavy, it would indent the leather and leave a little mark, so I didn't want to have that. And this fabric, surprisingly, was the most practical when I did all my own testing. So it does look unusual, but I really love it, and it's got this really nice, soft, organic feel. So it kind of feels like a spa-like experience whilst you're torturing yourself and doing weights. Off of the gym, we have this gorgeous balcony. So after we've done our workout, this is where we come in the morning and we sit, have a coffee, and just sort of get ready for the day. It's a really lovely spot to just sit and have a look at the garden. So tucked behind the door from the bedroom, we have this little coffee station, and I wanted to treat this gym like it was part of the primary suite. So often I'll link the colours between the bedroom and the bathroom, and I wanted to do the same with the gym. So we brought the Calacatta viola that's got those sort of dark burgundy tones that you've seen in the bedroom in here, and it just feels really luxurious. We've got a coffee machine, we store all of our coffee pods in here, we've got a little fridge down here, waters. It's a really great addition, again, because we have young children. We don't want to go downstairs, make too much noise. We can have a coffee, work out, relax, and the kids haven't even woken up yet. This bedroom is like a mini apartment in the house, and I think even before we had children, we designed it that it was going to be like a retreat from the rest of the house, a little mini escape. If I'm staying in the house by myself, my husband's traveling, I like to just spend as much time in the bedroom as possible. It just feels very cozy. And really, I think the way people live these days, we do spend more time at home. In the past, people kind of prioritize having lots and lots of bedrooms, whereas now I'm seeing a lot of my clients as well as ourselves, we wanted to just prioritize this primary suite and have everything we wanted up here. Leading off the foyer to the main bedroom, we have my dressing room. This was previously a guest bedroom, but we wanted to incorporate it into the main suite so we could have separate his and her dressing rooms. And this really is my ultimate escape from the world. I find it such a relaxing room. It's a space where I don't just get ready in the morning, but I even work here one day a week. I'll work from home and I sit at my dressing table and do Zoom calls and catch up on emails. I'm currently painting lots of dogs for a wallpaper that I'm designing. So I'll sit here and paint dogs, and it's just such a peaceful space. I've got beautiful view out of our garden, and it's just a retreat. I can shut the door and I don't have to listen or hear anyone. This dressing room, like pretty much all of the rooms in our house, has evolved quite a lot. Things that I've changed over time is we added this chinoiserie wallpaper. This was from Fremantle. This was actually the very first wallpaper that I had from them, or any chinoiserie wallpaper. And it was a real investment because it's all hand embroidered on silk, but I absolutely love it. You know, I look at it and appreciate it every single day. Even though I've had it for many, many years now, I'll notice small details, whether it's the bird or the butterflies. It gives me so much joy every time I look at it. Another thing that we changed over time was I realized very quickly was that I needed more storage. So I had an ottoman, sort of a chaise longue in the middle of the room here previously, and I changed it into an island. And this is just a great space for additional clothes storage, sunglasses. I feel like my biggest advice to any client or anyone designing a home is you can never have too much storage. So I just wanted to maximize all the storage I could get. The chandelier above is a really understated chandelier. It's kind of inspired by the Art Deco era. I've had it for a long time, and it's kind of worked with every iteration of this room. And I think for me, that's what I love about understated design, is that it is timeless and you might change other things in the room, but this will evolve and it works with so many different settings. My own home has been kind of like a science lab for our design studio over the years. I often test out ideas that I'm not sure if they'll work or be practical to live with in my own home before I try them on clients. And this wardrobe was an example of that. These are all upholstered in wool, and I really wanted to see how practical that would be, because for me, I don't like to have a wall of hard finishes of wood. It can feel quite oppressive, and where there was a lot of joinery in here, I felt it needed something a bit softer. So I had them upholstered in a fabric, and then they've got these really discreet handles, and it's something that's worked really well. But I'm glad that I did it in my own home first, because I've learned a lot from this. You know, it has got some marks over time, so this is why I always say test it on your own home, don't do it on a client. Now we've finished the primary bedroom, we are going to go and have a look at our children's bedrooms. We're now in my son Oscar's room, and he is 5 years old, but this is the design that I created for him even before he was born. And it's intentionally quite grown up, especially for a baby. And the reason why I did that was, now that I'm a mum, I realise how quickly children grow up. And so I didn't want to redesign it every few years as he transitioned to the next stage. So I've gone for a very sort of sophisticated backdrop of this herringbone wallpaper, which is by Philip Jeffries. And then I layered on some fun, playful elements with the artwork. So we have these felt animal heads. We've got this gorgeous lion. We have a giraffe, goat, I think it is, or a sheep, and an owl. These all by Fiona Walker England, which is a supplier in the UK. And I love how playful they are. And even though my son's 5, I asked him the other week, does he want to change them into something a bit more grown up, but he doesn't want to let them go yet. There's a real mix in here of different styles, and I think a lot of people, when they're designing kids' rooms and particularly nurseries, they fall into the trap of choosing a matching suite of furniture, Whereas I wanted to design this room like I would any other room and mix in different styles. So we've got an antique desk that I've sourced for him. This is a piece that I hope they will have forever. And then he's got some personalized items like this toy trunk. This is actually where I keep all of his old clothes from when he was a baby that I can't bear to part with. And what I love about this is it's got his monogram OTP, which is Oscar Thomas Patterson. In this corner over here, we've got a reading corner, and this is where, when he was a baby, I used to sit here with him before I put him to bed and read a book, and you've got a little footstool. And I like how this is a lot more contemporary, so you've almost got this mid-century vibe that's combining with those beautiful antiques, and it creates a really interesting and layered approach in his bedroom. For his bed, I love that preppy style that they do so well in the US. So I've got lots of monograms, again the monogram on the cushion, on the bed linen, and then I've combined that with some tan leather on the headboard. I'm always mindful of practicality, so I wanted to mix in some really practical fabrics, but then I've added some luxurious touches like this custom bedspread that's got this beautiful trim in a leather of the Greek key. This is by Samuel & Sons. Trim is something that I use a lot in general, so again, to just make the plain Roman blinds a bit more layered and luxurious, I've added this trim down the edge, which combines nicely with the wallpaper. For the artwork, I've stuck with the theme of animals. It works out that he absolutely adores animals, which obviously I didn't know when I was designing this and I was pregnant. But these are really cute, playful photographs of baby animals. And we've just put those in a gold photo frame, but this is something that we can change out over time as he finds new interests. So this area over here is this chest of drawers, is where I used to change his nappy when he was a baby, but now we've transitioned it just into like a space for storing his toys. We have a dachshund, a long-haired dachshund, and Oscar is very much responsible for that because he's always been obsessed with dogs, particularly dachshunds. One of my team members has a short-haired dachshund, and Oscar always wanted to get his own dog. So finally, about 8 months ago, we got one. But you can see these are the remnants of when he wasn't able to have his own dog. He just had lots of teddies instead. There's some really beautiful items on these shelves. These were a gift from Fenella Elms when she found out that I was pregnant with Oscar, because we'd supported her so much in her work. She so kindly made these little mini artworks for him, which I think is just so precious. So I keep them up there nice and high so he can't break them. But even some of his own artwork, I actually love this. I think it looks like a really cool piece of modern art. I think he did this when he was about 2. It's meant to be like a reindeer, but he's completely gone out the lines, but it looks really cool. And then some of his little teddies and books that we've got here. So it's a really cute room. But now we'll head into my daughter's room. This is my daughter Ava's bedroom, and I designed this for her when she was 3. She used to sleep in what is now Oscar's bedroom, but I moved her into this larger bedroom, and I was really mindful that I didn't want her to feel displaced, so I felt like whatever we did in here had to be extra special. The main feature in here is probably her 4-poster bed, which has real princess vibes. All of the curtains work, and she absolutely loves drawing the curtains and making it into a little den at night time when she's going to sleep. She has the same chest that I had in Oscar's room, except for it's got her initials. Ava, like Oscar, also has an antique desk, and I found them both around the same time, but this one has a particularly lovely story. The dealer that sold it to me knew the family that had owned it personally, and he told me that the lady who'd owned it had died maybe 10 years before, but she was a beauty queen back in the 1930s. And this had been her dressing table all her life. So I love that we know that sort of heritage of it, and now it's Ava's dressing table that hopefully she'll have for life. This wall covering is quite a main feature in the bedroom, and I feel like I talk about wall coverings a lot. I think I have a real passion for them. This one I designed for Ava, and it since has become part of our collection with Fremantle. And Ava was very heavily involved in designing it because she, like Oscar, loves animals. And her request was that we had family groupings of the animals. So you can see here, we have the daddy elephant, the mummy elephant, and the baby elephant. And then over here, I'm not really sure who this one is, but we got a 4th elephant in there. So it's really sweet, and it has a lot of memories attached to it. Now that she's 8, she is now evolving into the next stage. And very sadly, I feel like I'm gonna have to let this wallpaper go. So I keep reminding myself every time she tells me that she wants to redecorate that this is her bedroom. So who knows, maybe in a year's time this might look different, but it's going to be a sad day for me when I have to get rid of this. Ava's a very lucky girl because she has her own sort of dressing area in the bedroom, and we took inspiration from the island in my dressing room, which she always loved. And as a surprise for one of her birthdays, I had an island made for her, and she loves playing shops in here, and I'm always the customer and she always sells me things and tells me I have to pay with real money. And then for her wardrobes, we also wanted to go for a different approach rather than just timber. So what I did here was a timber frame all the way around. And then we've done this mother of pearl wall covering recessed into the middle, and it just adds a lot of interest and texture and lightens this whole wall up. And then these handles themselves, these are from Armac Martin. This was a handle that I designed for them, which you can see is inspired by bamboo. Now this is a very special gift for Ava. My father bought this for Ava on her first Christmas, and it's a rocking horse that was custom made by the Stevenson brothers. And the Stevenson brothers have supplied the royal family, the late Queen, ordered rocking horses for all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren by this manufacturer. So it was really special to be able to go there, and I was able to specify everything from the colour of the horse, even the saddle blanket, which you can see has been embroidered with her name. And then it has a plaque at the bottom that says, "To Ava, with love from your granddad." So I hope that this will be a future heirloom that she'll be able to give to her children. And she's had this ever since she was 1, but she still really enjoys plaiting its tail and plaiting its mane and riding on it. So I hope that she enjoys this for many years to come. This chandelier has been a really great chandelier to use in here because I really wanted something that would have a lot of width in terms of its volume, but not too much drop because the ceiling height isn't as generous. I love how this has got all these glass beads, and it kind of reminds me like a jellyfish. And it gives a really soothing light at night time when Ava's going to sleep. She always likes to leave this one on. The terrace for us and the garden on the whole is such an important part of this home. We live out here the whole time in the summer, and we try and use it as much as we can throughout the year. This particular area is probably our favourite part of the garden because we have this huge fire pit which we have linked up to the gas. So when we do entertain, we always end up having drinks here after we've finished dinner. We tend to come out here, and I love how this has got this really big chunky surround, so it kind of doubles up as a coffee table as well as a fire pit, and we'll have music and dancing, and again it's just like a really sociable space. For the winter months we've got these dome heaters, and I really love how sculptural they look. They almost look like they're a big floor lamp. But when you're sat here, we've even sat here on New Year's Eve watching fireworks in the garden under the heater and with the fire pit on, so it makes it a really usable space. We entertain a huge amount in the garden, and we were really lucky that on my 40th birthday, which was October last year, we had glorious sunshine and heat, so we planned the whole event to be in the house, and then an hour before all the guests arrived we decided to transition it all outside because it was just so beautiful. And we ended up having, I think, about 35, 40 people around this fire pit. We had fireworks, we had a Cuban band. We've had some great parties at this house, and we've got some really happy memories, and I think this is one of the best places. We have a lot of friends that have come to parties at our house and then recreated this area in their own garden because it works so well for parties. So as much as I love this area, part of the renovation I touched on earlier is that the garden is going to change, and we actually have got planning for an extension out on this part of the garden. We're going to do a pool and a pool house. So as much as I love this area, it is going to change. So if you were to come back in a year and a half's time, it would look completely different. But I'm really excited about all the plans, and we're going to have a busy year and a half between the house renovation and all of our projects. I think for me, what makes a house a home is the feeling that it creates. I think whenever I have people here, we entertain a lot, as I said earlier. I really want people to feel relaxed. I don't want them to feel like they've got to be on their best behaviour. So there's just little things that I do, like every time you're sat down in an armchair, you're always going to have a table within arm's reach so you know where to put your drink. We have performance fabrics. We're not fussy about it. And I think that really helps create that atmosphere. And that for me is what a home is about. I want to be able to have fun here. I want to relax. It's a place where we can sort of bond with our children. And then if I think about decor, it's just those personal touches. You know, I love and embrace antiques. I think they offer so much character to a home. And then just little touches like photo frames. You'll see around my home, I have so many photo frames. Memories, not just like big events like weddings, but just like memories of silly moments with the children that every time I look at it, it makes me smile and feel happy. Thank you, Homeworthy, so much for coming to have a look around my home. I've loved showing you around, and I hope to see you again soon. Maybe, who knows, you might come back in 2 years when I've completed our renovation. If you've enjoyed this tour and you'd like to see more of our work, don't forget to check us out on YouTube at Sophie Patton Interiors. Take care, and thanks for coming to visit.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.